Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Newmarket Planning Board meeting of April 8th to order at 7 o'clock. If everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will first like to welcome our new members, Zachary Scholar, Michael Scully, and James Hahn. Welcome, congratulations. If it would be great if you could kind of introduce yourself, and we are on TV, so the public can get to know you a little bit better too, because hopefully they'll be seeing you every month or more. So yeah, let's start.
So my name is Zach Schaller. Been a resident of Newmarket since 2020. I'm like 33 now, 34. I remember getting up there in years, I guess. Engineer by trade. So kind of my background is in that, and just kind of close-ish to Main Street, and so I kind of live in this neck of the woods, and looking forward to kind of bringing that lived perspective, if you will, to the
Great, welcome.
Thanks.
Anyone have any questions for Zach? Do you go by Zachary or Zach?
Typically Zach, yes, unless I'm in trouble.
Michael, I've been living in Newmarket for over 11 years now. I grew up in Epping, so I've been in the area basically my whole life. We just had a little baby boy last week, so I have 3 kids now.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
3.
Yeah, 2 boys, and my oldest is a girl, 14. So, this is the first board I've ever been on, but I'm looking forward to getting up to speed and learning as much as possible. Been working in nursing for 13 years now. I worked for the county for 10 years, and now I work at Riverwoods in Exeter.
Oh, excellent.
For the last 3 years or so. So I work a lot, but I'm happy to help out.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Bart has a young family.
Mike and I talked about it today.
Jamie, welcome back.
Hi, I'm Jamie Berton. This is my second time on the planning board. I was here, was it 2018? 20, something around there.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah, exactly, pre-COVID. I've been in Newmarket since 2003. I'm a licensed. I've spent the last 25 years working for multiple brokers in different spaces around the state. Actually, 4 years in Nantucket before we moved here, and like to be involved in the community, and space needed to be filled, and here I am.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
And welcome back. Okay, I'll appoint Bill as Bill Archeri as an alternate, so you'll be a voting member tonight if we're voting on anything.
Everyone's here,
We're
right?
everyone here, full board.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're not voting.
Sorry, Bill.
Unless someone recuses themselves. Speaking of, and everyone should have that in their packet. So Eric, our past planning board member and past chair, has applied for one of the 2 alternate positions. Is this a 3-year position?
3-year position.
Okay. And doesn't have the expiration date. Okay. 2028. So this was just submitted.
Yeah.
All right, so for anyone who doesn't know Eric, he was served, on the board in the past for several years, was the chair for many years, 10 plus years, and he is a professional engineer as well. Would like to continue to serve. Can I have a motion? Or we vote for, could I have a motion to appoint Eric to a 3-year term ending in 2028? Motion by Jeff.
Second.
That's, I knew I wanted you voting. You're trying to just trick me.
I guess I will say.
Okay, second by Zach. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. So Eric does need to go
He's gotta
and
swear.
re-swear. Okay.
Gotta do
So
that.
we'll get that taken care of. All right.
My expiration date?
I think you were 3 years, so you got 2 years left. Or check that. Yeah, 2.5.
So, let's go to new business after for the website, for terms, and the rules.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is a review and approval of minutes. Have the new members been able to watch the live? I know, Zach, you were here. All right, all of our meetings are on demand, right through the website. So you can watch them. And there was a lot of discussion about, the current agenda item, which is the rezoning for the Main Street corridor, or Route 108 corridor. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the minutes before I jump in? When I reviewed them, I thought that there were some discrepancies as to some of the discussion items and then what actually got put into the minutes in sections that were left out of the minutes. And I have not had a chance to review the online meeting. I think it's important that the minutes reflect any of the consensus items that then we turned in, or we can adjust if people, so we can either postpone the minutes if people want to review recording, or we can adopt and approve these minutes, and then there could be other changes that we'll make tonight when we actually review the proposed ordinance. How do people want to handle the minutes?
Can wait till the next meeting to approve these, couldn't we?
Mm-hmm.
If you feel it's necessary. I don't see why we wouldn't.
I feel like I would abstain, because I haven't had a chance to read that, and I felt there was some misses and some inaccuracies from the discussion.
Make a motion to put off the approval of the minutes until the next meeting.
That would be to May 13th, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Second week.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, next business meeting. Is there a second?
So I guess
Second by Jeff? Okay, any further discussion on that?
I didn't get that sense. It'd be helpful if you know areas you thought.
We had a lot of discussion about the breakdown of the various thresholds in some of the areas, and that wasn't included. There was a significant discussion about that.
Density,
Because we had the 8, 12, 16,
yeah.
right? That's wasn't captured.
Yeah. I thought that was in the previous meeting.
No, because I've got all of that on the markups. So I was going through the markup of my following the ordinance that we were reading. I felt like there was so much discussion in certain sections that didn't. And granted, the minutes are, we weren't making any motions, which is really what the minutes need to reflect, but.
Right.
I remember you guys went back and forth a lot about like north, south, and center with like frontage and setbacks. There's a lot of back and forth on that. But I don't remember enough specifics to back you guys up.
I hadn't reviewed them prior, to be honest, but I was surprised that there were only 2 pages. Because it was a long meeting, we discussed it.
And understand that Brittany's reviewing the meeting and then writing the minutes, correct?
Correct.
So she's just grabbing
Tape.
from the tape.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not verbatim of who said what, understand that. But I think if we come back and say, gee, you know, this was missed, maybe it will also bring to her attention some of the areas that, when we're talking about this, it's important to get in minutes.
Yeah, I think if the board feels it's important to be there, it should be there. Like you said, it's not meant to be a verbatim transcript. It's
Right.
Yeah, these used to be like 30 pages. Okay, and we didn't make it, so.
Right.
Okay, so this, we have a motion on the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll put that on next agenda.
Could I make a small comment?
Sure.
May 13th is an election. Is that going to affect?
Oh, that's the special election.
Yeah.
Oops.
Well, who planned that?
Well, it's always on
Yeah,
a
it's-
Tuesday. I don't know.
I plan for March.
I personally don't think it's a big deal. I mean, it's a very,
It's the special election for the
Yeah.
Charter Commission.
Correct.
it's just the Charter Commission, so.
What do you mean just? It's the future of our town.
It's for the future of our town.
What time is the voting?
I assume the election's over at 7, right?
I don't know.
And likely it will be voting in the town hall here?
I would guess,
so.
yeah.
Are people fine with still meeting at 7? Do you think we're gonna have any applications on the agenda?
There's a possibility, but nothing like major.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it would be an acceptance and,
Yeah.
okay.
Do they use the space at all?
No, they use downstairs.
Yeah, it was
So they don't go
it'd be in the
No.
Or
basement.
anything afterwards?
No.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't think so. No, everything's kind of contained downstairs.
All right. And that doesn't conflict with you. You don't have to be here all day, right? Don't you come in usually later if you have a meeting?
Yeah, or I
Oh,
leave, or I
okay.
leave, or I leave a little early and come back. You know,
Well, okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're not gonna be here for,
correct.
you
Yeah,
know, 10 hours.
depends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Depends. Depends on the meeting. I'm not gonna say anything. Okay.
I don't want Steve to say, Bart, you've gotta
Yeah.
be
No, no.
downstairs all day.
No, that's usually
So I
that's
just
the
bring it up
realm
in
of the
case
town
you wanted
clerk.
to move it to the next,
Yeah.
to the
No,
following week.
no, I
Yeah.
think we stay on our schedule. Good. All right, so that's,
Could be advantageous.
did that motion get voted on?
I didn't hear it. Did it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it did. It did
Okay,
get voted.
and
Yeah,
then-
it did.
You asked
All
for the
I
ayes.
waited until it passed before I mentioned.
Bring it up during any discussion, then we would have amended it. Go on.
Right.
All right. Okay, let's jump into the regular business, which is review and discussion of proposed amendments. And if we're gonna set a public hearing on it. I'd like to start with the dimensions table, so that we really can move the dimensions table forward and that we're all on the same page. Because this really drives a lot of the narrative within the ordinance.
That's 89.
So that's page 34 of 96. If you go through your paperwork, that Bob handed out. And everything he sends is linked online too. And this is what we're looking at, the dimension table. Can you put that up?
Oh, sure, I can.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that'd be great. All right, so Bart's gonna put this up. And many thanks for reorganizing the dimensions table. This would, you know, when everything gets adopted, you know, this basically also applies to all the zones in town. It's a much better format as to putting the dimensional requirements across the top as opposed to the actual zones. It's just so much easier to read, you know, from, you know, left to right, going through each of the items, so
Maybe you could start by
appreciate
just
that.
saying what it is this is.
So the dimensional table is
No,
what?
this is a master plan
No,
that we're developing, no?
no, this is a zoning
This
ordinance.
is a zoning ordinance that's going into the master plan, right?
No,
No? Okay,
no,
I thought
Scott,
it
no.
was. Okay.
For those of you at home and on the
Yeah.
planning board, we are currently discussing this evening, and this is, you know, just the extension of the proposed zoning amendment for the corridor. So I'm gonna call it the Main Street corridor, the Village corridor, as we start referring to it as the North Village, and we'll go into a map in a minute. Or can you maybe bring the map up, if that's easy, Bart?
What you want to do?
Uh,
You think the map would be easier?
I think the map, only because of Scott's question.
Well,
Or
it's not my
comment.
question, we have three brand new people here
Well,
that have
that-
no
yes.
idea what you're talking about, right?
Well, let's hope they do, but to your point,
Yeah.
This is not master planning, okay? This is all a zoning ordinance. There is an ordinance in place that we're looking to amend. And we're looking to amend for basically 3 core sections of town. Bart, I'm gonna have you go through it, sure.
Okay, sure.
You wanna grab a
Yeah.
mic, or?
Yeah, I better. Folks at home can hear you. So,
Yeah. Okay.
So this is under, there's 3 separate sub-districts. This is called the Village Corridor District. And it comprises of 3 different sub-districts. One along North Main Street, includes some properties that front on Dame Road and Bay Road. And then in the middle, we see here in black, that's the center. And that's your Main Street, you got some Elm Street there, South Main Street, Jerry Ave, parts of Exeter Road. And then to the south sub-district, which is Exeter Road and Bennett Way, the 2 main roads there. Just so, and then talk about the R3 district in a second there. But yeah, so over the course of our review, the planning board's review, they decided that there's more nuance needed for these different sections of town. So it's primarily driven by dimensional controls. So that's why we kind of broke it up into 3 different districts, because there's different land uses there currently. Some more, say, more undeveloped or vacant, some more developed, and need a little more context. So of course, like 3 months or so, we've kind of been deliberating and kind of refining these dimensional controls. Any questions so far for new members?
And then for clarification, I do like this, the core, you're now calling the Village Corridor Central.
Central, yeah. So, we
So
got North-
VCC,
VCC, so we got VCN, VCC, VCS.
as we go
Yeah.
into the dimensional table, we've got these 3 sections that will have variations.
So North Main Street is heading towards Durham.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it ends at the Memorial Bridge right here. And you get a little Bay Road section.
And then just for him, that corridor currently is called a B1, and there's been very little redevelopment up there. So only business, you couldn't do any residential. Down is kind of the M1, M2 district that had different zoning. And then the pink area, or red, is the M1A, which was adopted a few years ago to change that for mixed use. And there have been some projects approved there, but, well, one's been constructed with variances, but the others haven't really gone, hasn't come to fruition. So we've looked at redoing this whole corridor with the intent of kind of expanding Main Street out. And that was coming out from, some of the public input sessions.
It's also the current master plan chapter. They identifies this corridor as an area to focus on for rezoning purposes. So, we have this rational basis through, it was confirmed through, as Scott said, master plan process that we're currently going through as well. That these are areas of town where they like to see maybe similar patterns as we have in downtown. Not exact, but similar. So, but yeah, so I just want to take a pause here. To incorporate the zoning district, we have to dissolve existing ones, some of them. So
M2A.
what we have right now is the B1, where you see all this blue for the most part. That's what B1 was. That one's still staying because there's some other parcels in town that are zoned for B1, but for this whole north end of town, it's going to go away. And then the other one that's actually going to, 2 other ones that are going to completely dissolve is the M1 district, used to be the mill buildings. So that was zoned specifically for the mill purposes. And we can get into that a little later, where controls will go. And then the M2A, which is kind of right here and down here a little bit. So for people at home, Elm Street, Main Street, and then I think, was that Central Street? And then on Jerry Ave, a little bit of Exeter Road. You had some other M2A there. So these right here are zoned for M2A as well, these 3 parcels. We have additional zoning that the board was given through us, and we're kind of calling that the T4 for right now as a placeholder, but in the interim, we need to rezone this something appropriate. So the whole area right here, which is like New Village, is zoned similarly
these properties would be zoned similarly to those properties. So we're kind of
The same zone.
same
Well,
zone.
yeah, and the history on that is they were undeveloped when we adopted the M2A, and that could have all been mixed use, right? Because you had different access. And a developer, Timber, bought it, and he put in housing there.
Yep.
So it's more consistent with the R3
Correct.
and, in the abutting properties there.
Yep.
It's all developed.
It's all developed. It's just like as Val said, it matches the pattern of the current R3
Yeah,
district.
that's what I said, huh?
Yeah, that's what he said. I was iterating.
It's good he speaks now.
But yeah, so that's kind of where we are right now, and maybe this segues into the dimensional
Can I
controls.
ask a question, Bert?
Yeah, sure.
It looks like the new apartment building over here.
Yep.
That was just built was changed from Village South to Village Center. And I was curious if there's a reason. Does it better fit that zone?
I think it better fits that zone, because it's more dense. The center is going to be more dense than, well, we'll find out tonight. We have an opportunity to maybe make some switches, but yeah, I just thought it was a better pattern, especially as we go through this exercise again. That
Well, it's connected.
it's connected to
road
South Main
To
Street.
center, because that's
Yeah.
there. So it'd be
Right.
like, you'd be separated from the rest of those.
And it's difficult to see that
It's-
change as commercial when you just build a brand new building.
It's going to be non-conforming no matter what. Even with our new zoning, it's still a non-conforming building. Yeah. So,
But
So
I
I
think, I
guess
think
the
it makes
question-
sense to just keep it as
That's
proposed.
this one.
yeah.
Okay, I was just curious. I just
Yeah.
noticed the change.
Okay, well, any questions for Bart on where we're going with this? So north, central, south.
Yep. All right. I'm going to zoom to the
Seems to
dimensional.
me.
So as he's doing that, then the table, then you guys really only looked at modifying just those first 3 rows essentially, so.
Correct, so there's,
Focusing on those and nothing below that's like changing.
yes, we're only looking at 3 items, north, center, south. And then there is a whole zone that has, 2 zones, as Bart mentioned, has just come off the table, which is the mills, which is just the mill buildings, M1, and the M2A, because those are just being converted to this new zone. They're incorporated in. And so we have the consistency there. Okay, so hopefully people can see that. We'll just go right down from the village, from road frontage. So I think the consensus was, we thought it would mean, we were in agreement that in the north and south, it would be 50 feet, and the center section would be 40. So I'm gonna check these off, if there's no discussion on that. All good? Okay. We had a lot of discussion about the minimum lot size, and this is one of the discrepancies we'll talk about. And I think we're good with 3,000 in the core,
Yeah.
right? And then it's not 3,000 everywhere, and then 5,000 on the outside, because that was more consistent. So I agree with the table.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
All
No, I
right.
think we're good
Yeah.
with, everyone's good with the table? Okay. Residential density, that's going to be whether or not we even have that, because it's gonna matter if we do mill redevelopment, if that gets changed.
We should have that discussion. If can
Jump-
we pause right there right now?
Yeah,
So I recommend that we don't change mill redevelopment because there could be some consequences, I think.
okay, let's.
So I think there needs to be
we'll
more
talk about
time
that. Okay,
devoted to that. So that's why I created its
Sure.
own section.
all right, and we can always just remove it, and
Yeah.
then the asterisks come away.
Correct.
Okay. So we're gonna keep all that, everyone's good for now on that. Okay, density, we talked a lot about that. I thought we had maximum density of so in this instance, it's gonna be 12,816. And then asterisk that you would need a special use permit. Add in my notes. Am I like wrong on
That's
that?
what it says. It says if it doesn't meet this, then you need, I think the
The table,
statement said, this is pre-approved, otherwise you need a special thing. Doesn't it say that?
let's stick to the table.
Okay.
Right now, this table says that I can do 16 units on a lot in every one of the districts without getting any other permits.
Right.
Right.
Site plan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you said-
We had a lot of discussion on breaking this down, and why we also wanted to break out the table also, into 12, 8, and 16. Or I might have the numbers wrong, let me pull them up. Like, I know I have them
I
wrong.
know there was discussion, especially about redevelopment of that house.
I thought that was the threshold into which,
It was the threshold that would target a special use permit.
Yeah, that's what the 16.
There we go. Yeah, so south, we were all good with 16. North, we were good with 12. Felt it was kind of, shouldn't be as dense unless somebody came before us with a site plan. And then we had 8 in the corridor,
center.
center,
Yep.
BCC.
Yeah.
Does anyone remember a discussion that we were gonna do 16 across the board without having to come to the board?
I thought it was 16 across, could be wrong, but then we'd have these controls along the in the major corridors.
So I think that's why they should be
The commercial.
asterisked, that anything higher than the threshold, we would have the discretion, site plan.
Well, I think we would because, we have to, as of right now, the regs are written for site plan. Anything above 3, it's coming to the board.
I think about 4.
Right now, it's 3.
Oh, right now?
Yeah.
No, but,
Yeah.
we had talked
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
But we definitely had a density discussion. That was the biggest thing I wanted to go back to on the minutes, or the meeting.
I agree with you, and those different thresholds.
Okay.
I just didn't know how the special use plays into this table.
So what would happen, as of right now, how it's written, if we did the different thresholds for each zone, you'd be restricting, if it's an 8 unit building
Right.
for the middle. What'd you say for north? What was it?
North was 12.
12.
And south was 16.
Right.
And that's on a lot. So someone would have to have a big enough lot to subdivide to do more units.
It's by
in-
building, not lot.
Maximum residential density, oh, you put them by building.
Yeah.
Oh.
So the density is the
Right,
mills
because then
there.
we're going back to form-based zoning, and we're gonna
Yep.
pick which
Buildings.
ones can go in. We're gonna
Correct.
have a comment on that right later, but
Okay.
which buildings are permitted in the different areas. But right, by building.
Yeah.
And if you get anything more than that, they may go special use.
A variance,
Or variance.
a different type of building, yeah, a bigger building.
So the idea was, as an example, that somebody had a big enough lot but couldn't, 3 16-unit buildings, right, that was the discussion, on a lot on North Main Street. 3 of them. Because they could have enough acreage,
It wouldn't matter.
and they may have to meet that other threshold in site plan where they have to have different styles.
The 16 unit goes away without a variance if we do the 12.
And we talked about that.
I remember talking about multiple buildings on lots.
Oh, no?
So I
That's
think it just
by
happens
building.
even.
Yeah.
That they'd have to go through subdivision.
They still have to go through,
Well, we definitely talk about multiple buildings on a lot, because the whole idea of the form-based zoning was that you also couldn't, you had to have not all homogeneous style buildings if you were doing a whole redevelopment of, let's say, the open space
Yeah, I
lots.
didn't picture them as separate buildings, because you got the next length of the building face.
That's what I thought too.
And then I thought we were talking about a single building with different facades to make it look into different buildings.
For a certain number of units.
I think that was the frontage discussion you guys were having, because you had a smaller front.
Yeah, and that's when we got into the
narrower
adopting
buildings.
the frontage.
And also the 16-unit buildings couldn't be built in the center anyways because of the frontage.
Right,
Right.
no, but I mean, like, because a building has to have, the face needs to be broken, the building is so long, like, right?
Yeah, we changed it a little bit to,
Like, if you
it's more of
have
like townhouses, yeah.
100 frontage,
Yeah.
you can't just do the same exact face for 100 feet, right? You have to change it.
Right, that'd be covered under site plan regs, yeah. Have it here is, yeah, say if you did like a townhouse. Because the building's gonna be separated anyways, and the longest building you have is 100 feet. So, and then you have the building separation right there. Unless you're in the center, BCC, then you can only do 50 feet. So there would be a separation. So the question is, where could you have a very long, so it's the townhouses I think were most concerning, and you have to have the way it's written here, it has to be broken up.
Yeah, when we get into the
Yeah.
form-based styles,
Yeah.
they do have dimensions on them. And it is the townhomes, because you can
Yep.
just keep stacking, stacking, stacking.
Right.
Are there any 16-unit buildings in? No, you said you wanted to have a center go down to 8. I'm just trying to think of how large. There's not really any large, I think 8-unit buildings like in the center.
Well, the mill redevelopments, right? You've got 120 units in one, and
Maybe one in
70 something
Chapel,
in the other.
couple in Chapel Street.
But as you go up,
Because I guess the
there's a
risk,
big,
the risk in the numbers is either you're not encouraging the type of building you want to see that's already there, which it sounds like there's not too many that are that realm as it is, or that we get a bunch of requests for variance because we set it too low and people are trying to maximize the amount of units that they get because we set it too low and they want to build bigger buildings for some reason, I guess.
and then they'd have to go to the zoning board and prove their hardship of why they can't redevelop the site. Unless they get all those units. That's a bigger threshold than coming to the planning board for a special use permit.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
conceptualize in my head the difference between 8 and 16. It's a number on a paper, but I'm trying to
Yeah, okay,
make
so
sense
let's
of
think
why it
about
really
that.
matters.
That one right there is like 30, how many units?
41.
41,
So that's
Okay.
41 units.
yeah.
That helps me at least picture like the scale of building that I'm trying to think
They're
what
small
that
units,
even.
but, yeah. Still 40 units.
Okay. So the 8's pretty low then, I guess, when you look at that block versus.
So in anything like
Wall Street.
on the main street would have commercial, so you're talking 8 units residential would be above the commercial space, right? As you come up the corridors, or the, the roads into Main Street, or even along this section in Jerry Ave, right? So
The
the,
building behind the bean, that's like 10 units.
oh, that's a good one to, or behind the post office.
Yeah.
Behind the bean is
Yeah.
the white building there.
Right.
The one by the post office must be
Yeah.
20, right?
No, it's not
Seems
that.
low,
It's not that large.
in the center, there's
The like orange gray one, and the
I
orange.
don't even realize they're that big that are existing there.
One thing is we have the
Almost
parking
20.
requirements.
That's the other problem, like, so in downtown, there's 0 parking, where in the north or south, it's 1 per unit.
Yeah.
So that was the other part about, the limitation of residential, right, and not really limiting in the core, right, as buildings get redeveloped. But and they're smaller lots to begin with.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to pull up on the
Do
map.
we want the 50-foot building heights?
Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
that's 4 stories.
And then, right,
That changes, it makes it a lot easier to make 16 units on 4 stories.
oh, absolutely. He builds out that, like the space, redevelops the space behind, like, say, the post office, and,
Yeah.
right, 50 feet high with
Yeah, I guess for those few
It's already
examples-
so 50 feet. It's M2.
M2.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Building height allowed in M2. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, but then it's just
already
all
allowed.
residential.
I know, but it's already allowed 50 feet. Yeah, as existing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do we want that on the north side, I think? There's
Oh,
two
I
different
thought you were
things,
talking about
right?
center. Excuse me.
Yeah, so I guess for those few examples where you actually have a lot big enough to go over 8, is it reasonable for those developers to come in and basically ask for the variance? Because they're like, it's the 1 or 2 oddball, like larger lots that can fit that, so you're mapping out for the most parcels, which 8
Right.
would make sense for those. Versus just setting it super large and just allowing it to kind of run the gamut.
We do have the dimensional where in that area it's 50 feet width is an extra control. At least along,
So they're tall, skinny buildings.
Yeah. right.
Okay.
But multiples on a lot potentially. What's the 50-foot? Depends on the style. You go back into
Yep.
the building style.
Mhm.
And they don't have to be commercial on the ground floor unless they're right on Main Street.
Correct.
Yeah, I guess 8 seems kind of small on my end of it, but at the same time seems reasonable based on what's already there, so I'm amenable to that. Do you guys think that makes sense for all things considered? So I'm drinking from a fire hose with all these numbers flying around and all of that.
I think that's kind of where we settled. We went around with 6, 12, 8, but we felt like we needed to, they're small spaces, small lots, not much room, building dimension, 8 was appropriate, but
Yeah, especially the parking consideration, I mean, that
to
does
your
make it
point though
harder, so-
about some of them being already 16, I mean, so if a developer comes into one of those buildings and wants to redevelop it, is it an easy case for that developer to say,
Well, I think it's a different case before the zoning board.
yeah,
Okay, I got an idea.
but I'm just wondering, I mean, I know there's a different threshold, a different criteria for the zoning, but if there's already a 16-unit building on this lot, it would seem like that would be an easy case to make that, I don't know, that you can make another 16 unit.
And I think the discussion too about these thresholds is, I think it gave us a threshold to, right? Because now, if they're going over the threshold, they're gonna have a special use permit, and then therefore, there's other criteria they have to meet,
Yeah.
right? Impacts.
Yep,
um,
exactly.
It just gave more control to the board within, as opposed to having a blanket across. No matter where you are on the corridor, the little streets that come down, you can do 16 units if you can fit them on your lot.
Yeah, is that process extremely restrictive, or is it just, other than it gives another opportunity to kind of weigh in? Like, is it kind of like saying, well, it's probably not gonna happen because of that kind of special threshold, or how restrictive is it really?
So now you just have to meet the special use
Meet
permit.
the
It's a
criteria.
little bit
Yeah.
short.
It's not like a
necessarily-
variance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely granted them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
So it's
think
not
if we
totally
haven't
fair.
granted one.
Because you have to meet, if they meet the criteria, you have to. I mean, otherwise
I'm just
you,
wondering how
yeah.
this incentivizes a developer from going through that process, or are they?
And you work with developers, right?
Not,
Oh, you
He's a
don't?
different type of engineer.
different type of
Oh,
engineer.
right. So developers are, and Jamie knows this, so developers are looking, and Bill certainly, they're looking to understand the regulations and what they can do or what they need to do to go through the hurdles of getting a project approved. Does that make sense? I think that's been the input that we've had. And they don't want this like huge discretion on a board that they come before. It's like, what are the rules? And let me figure out if I could get my project to work within the rules. And I think the special use permit does give the board more oversight.
I have a suggestion. I think for the center, could we consider 12 unit max, because then we bring some buildings into conformity,
That are there, that are already in the center with 12.
or over 8.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of them, but
Yeah. But then I'm just looking at the building types.
yeah.
Get rid of the courtyard, have the center, and then allow for 12, and then you got a building, you can look on page 41, that I think would fit pretty well with the downtown.
Well, that's the one that has commercial in it, right, on the
Yep.
Main Street? Yeah, that,
Yeah,
okay.
so
And then on the back.
in the back, yeah,
It
so,
would be all residential.
yeah, or on top.
Could be,
Yeah.
well, what, the small apartment is, I think the small
6.
apartment.
Yep, and this one
And
is,
then
yeah, 12.
But the medium is 12.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that makes more sense, because 8 and 12's not super different. It seems like that building type would fit in there well.
The only concern again would be parking. And you'd open up yourself to the potential for more 12 units
Right.
than are currently there, right? Whereas
You might have 2 bedrooms and make 1 bedrooms, or,
yeah, or anything, so like, I think I don't know if more developers would be like, I don't care, I'll just get a special use permit, and put in 12, right? But, you can't really do spot zoning either, but you don't want to make someone that redevelops a 14-unit building come in for a special use permit to do 14 units, right?
And, yeah.
Which is the only issue you create, but you also don't want to open up every lot down there to increase the number of cars parked downtown by 3 or 4.
Is there any kind of like market sense where development? I would imagine that most people, especially around here, are probably going to have a car, at least 1 per unit, and so they just wouldn't build something because they're not going to be able to rent it out if they don't have the parking for the unit. So, are you able to say that the market will kind of accommodate some of that concern?
I don't know. I couldn't answer that question. I'm not 100% sure because
think
I don't even think we required them to have 1 spot per unit.
well, they get a variance
Yeah, over
for
there.
parking.
Because there was enough public parking close enough by.
That was their argument.
Yeah, exactly. And same for this.
Which works for them until everybody else starts putting the same thing and
Exactly.
starts relying on the
Right.
same ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, the railroad place has parking for everybody.
I thought they were,
It goes all the way back to Moonlight Brook.
I thought there were 37
Yeah.
spaces and there's 41 units or something like that.
Right.
No, the 61 spaces, 41 units.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm thinking of the the other development.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
the
the,
retirement
cheese.
or whatever, that has
has
like
one.
1-to-1, it was like 0.8.
There's a
to 1
commercial
parking.
element there too.
Yeah, there's commercial
So-
there too.
Yeah.
So Bill, what,
But I mean,
Yeah,
the
some of the
number of
spaces are
buildings we're
shared.
talking about here are 1 or 2, right?
within the corridor, the central
That
corridor?
have
But
that
you have
many
to,
units?
in downtown, you'd have to change the building to build one of these.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, or redevelop a building.
This is
Okay,
all
I'm just
about
saying it's a-
redevelopment, don't
Yep.
think there's any vacant lots downtown.
Yeah, short of the post office, you're probably talking more like up by Roma Joe's and like some of those lots, or closer to the Triangle, that I think would have big enough lots to really do some of these.
Is this one of these the Polish American Club's parking
That's
lot?
that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, that's their parking lot?
Yeah.
That's not their building though.
No,
Just
buildings on Central.
Yeah.
And
So
then the-
this is all about redevelopment of existing
Yeah.
buildings.
like, you might be able to put 12 units in the bank. Who knows? I don't really know.
Well,
But,
at 500 square feet, it's 3 stories.
I'm amenable to 8, so if that's what most people want, then so be it. I also could go up to 12, but if that's not, people don't have sense to do that based on the parking or other concerns, so be it. I think 8 would still serve the downtown fine and offer some redevelopment opportunity.
I'd like to remind the board, we decided, or last meeting, that 0 parking requirements in the center.
Correct, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, right.
There's no parking,
Yeah.
so, if we start
Where are they
saying
gonna go?
put more units, it's
Yeah.
like more demand, and until the town figures out the parking, where should we be going with the zoning?
But you also create more demand potentially for alternative transportation.
That too, yeah. I mean, Chapel Street, I don't see why we can't park the whole line of Chapel Street.
Well, that's a different conversation, but.
Bill, do you recall anything from what we're talking about? I mean, we had a long discussion on this.
Yeah.
So you're good with 8?
Yeah.
All right.
Those were the numbers.
Okay. 12, 8, 16. Okay? All right. Road setbacks, this was minimum. So on the north side, setback a minimum of 5 feet. Wasn't that maximum? Minimum.
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 And next table's maximum,
Right,
which
okay,
we'll
good,
discuss.
all right. So minimum setbacks, 5 feet, and that was to make sure we had some line of sight as people were pulling out. Nothing downtown in the central corridor, and then 5 feet on the south. So minimum setback,
And that's from the sidewalk, basically. So
From the right of way.
Town right away.
Sidewalk.
Yep.
town right away.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, then on the actual maximum,
Can I jump in?
Yep.
All right, so last meeting, the board decided 20 feet maximum, but I was thinking, looking at reviewing the recommendations and thinking about uses. And I think what was originally proposed, 50, might be good as well if there's a commercial use. Because what that can do,
this subsection.
I did, yes.
Okay.
So if there's a commercial element there, I think allowing for 50 feet setback might be good, because then, let's say it's a cafe, something like that, then
Yeah.
people have outdoor
Yeah.
seating.
That's good.
So allowing for that to occur. So if it's residential though, we don't need as much,
Right.
and we don't want buildings set back as much
Right.
from the road. How does people feel about that?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Bill?
I was struggling why we even needed a limit on the maximum side.
Because we want to keep buildings closer to the
Closer to the
road
road.
and people closer to the sidewalks. Connected into this
Yeah.
downtown.
Yeah,
It was
I
also to
guess.
keep parking on the side or in the back.
Well, they
Right.
can't do any parking even if it's 50 feet.
So yeah, it's an extra
Yeah.
control, make sure that they plan for parking in the back, which they have to do already, so allow them to be closer in the front. Or push them
Okay,
towards the
that-
clutch.
That makes sense,
Yeah.
that piece, yeah.
Yeah.
I,
What's that?
You could still pull, you could still pull in and park right 5 feet from the road, as long as there's a row of bushes there.
That's right, block it.
But if you're, because we always talked about bringing the buildings closer to the road.
Yeah.
And so if you had like, a building and then parking along the side of it, and you had your row on the road, would you need a row of bushes back to the building corner so you couldn't see the parked cars at all from the road?
If you have double frontage,
Well, wait a minute, I thought we decided at the last meeting, there's no parking in front of the building.
it would be the side of the building.
Be the
That'd be the
side.
side, yeah, the
Oh,
side.
you're thinking within the 50 feet side.
Yeah.
But it's the side of the building, not the side of the lot. Right? Side of the building.
I didn't know that cars had to be back past the front corner of the building. I pictured it just being to the side if you're standing on the street.
It can't be in the frontage, so it
Right.
can't be in front of the building. It has to be to the side of the building, parallel, directly parallel, or,
And it does say parking shall be from the street.
yeah.
So you can plant trees. Okay, so it has to be, can be no closer to the road
in the building.
than the
And
front.
that's how I
Yeah,
understood it.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess I think of like the example you say cafe, right? You had a mixed use 50 feet. So there's cafe the first 50 feet from the road. And then, yeah, you're talking about parking. What if you had like a pull-up spot for like delivery or pickup or something? Places that don't have that, couldn't have the parking.
And that would
in
come
that
through
first
site
50
plan,
feet.
and we do have the waiver rights within these dimensions.
You could add some parking in that 50 feet buffer between the building and the resident in that case.
I don't know, I was just wondering how if you were to park there, how you'd shield it from view of the road.
Well, shielded, could you put just like
Fence.
literally
Bushes
a
both ways.
You have a gate,
gate or if it's a wide enough lot, you just
fences
pull
don't
it
have to meet
just here and then
setbacks.
You're right in front of the bushes, which is shielded.
Sure. It's new.
No, it's not.
It's new.
It's new.
Yeah.
And what to
It's-
think about is if somebody, the proposal is anything over 4 comes before site plan,
Mhm.
right? So think about, there's a lot of duplexes or, triplexes, mixed use. If they're going to, someone's gonna, tear that building down and do a 4-unit residential with commercial, and they set that back, is it 50 feet, and they're parking in front of it? And I think that's more of the concern. Right, and that, because
Yeah.
it really, because they don't have to come before us, right? They just go in and get
This
their
is,
building
this is the
permit.
same dilemma that the board was in with the downtown commercial overlay district, where there was loopholes. So the idea is to catch, those instances where developments don't have to go in front of the board for review.
Because in those instances, they don't have to deal with any of the regulations. They don't have to screen from view,
Now they do.
even if they're,
This is zoning, yeah. It's not site plan.
they just
right?
don't come to site plan, they come to
Correct,
zoning.
yeah.
Okay, so we're covered on that.
What's that?
50 feet's pretty far.
Yeah, max, but that's for commercial. Residential, 20.
Right, but if you put a commercial
Mixed
building
use.
50 feet back, which
Yeah.
is further than this room is long. Right. Then you're
It's a
gonna-
lot of
you're
space.
gonna-
It's not minimum, it's
No,
maximum, yeah.
No, I know,
Yeah.
so somebody's like, I'm gonna push that max, and I don't know, I think like, it's just gonna push buildings closer to the river, parking lots behind the buildings closer to the river. I was against it last time too, so, I'm just revoicing the same opinion, so I'll stop.
But, okay, so, all right, Riverside, I understand where you're coming from, but the idea is to put more,
But the idea was to pull buildings closer to the street from the beginning.
yep, it's
Create
true,
that
but if there's,
community
Right.
Sidewalk building.
also
So-
you want to provide space
Gee,
for those commercial opportunities in the front.
That's a
Yeah.
big space,
Right.
50 feet. It's a lot of seating. You figure if a building's as wide as this room, and 50 feet back, the space in front of the building is this big.
Well, let's think about the auto compliance deciduous brewing. How big is a parking space?
9 by 18 feet.
So that's 18 feet plus the sidewalk that's been taken over.
Yep.
That is the sidewalk 6 feet?
That one's probably smaller, 5,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so there's 25 feet that they have an outdoor cafe.
30, how about 30? It's horse trade.
How about 30?
I mean,
Yeah,
it's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
I don't
just
mind
trying to
that.
add life in front of the buildings, Jeff, come on.
I don't mind voted, it's okay
Yeah.
with me. It's fine.
We
No, yeah,
value,
that's
we
different.
value your opinion, that's why,
There's
so,
impressionable minds here.
yes.
Okay, we're good on,
So changing the max.
the max
mixed use to
setback.
30. So is that in all of them or just
How about, yeah,
Yeah.
let's do that, make it easy.
If anybody wants to see what a 5-foot setback looks, go to that house next to Dame Road.
Oh, yeah, the corner one.
Yeah.
That's 5
Oh,
feet.
yeah,
It used to be a grocery store.
Oh, really?
That's what it was built
the
for.
sign store?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That started as a grocery store. They built the building in the back was like a connected.
Yeah.
But and she lived above the grocery store.
Gotcha.
But that's what we want to get, right?
We do want those
It's a little-
bodegas.
Every section of town had a little grocery store. Okay, side rear setbacks, I think we're all good on that, we've talked that one. To death, any questions from new members about what we're talking about with side and rear setbacks? So these are minimums,
And side setback is from the property line or from the? like,
Property line.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the same thing in the rear from the property line.
from the
Correct.
property
Just can't be
line,
right on the line essentially.
correct.
Okay. Except for.
Except for center.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's the building itself. So Newmarket doesn't look at like driveways as a structure or, so it's the building. Okay. Structure height, 35, 50, 50. I think we were all good with that. So we just didn't want the mass up on the north side.
Mhm.
Okay,
It's currently at 35, but at 30,
I forget
The
what
rest of
B1
town
is.
35.
It's probably 35 there.
yeah.
B1 is
It's another-
35.
It's another story higher than we currently have.
No, 'B1's 35, it's on the chart.
That's in the north.
Yeah, that-
No, yep.
Yeah, that's current, so there's
So
no
be
change
consistent
there.
with What's around there.
Right, but in the central, isn't it also 30?
Nope,
50.
the
Oh, it
center's
is
50.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and M2 is 50, so that's consistent.
Sorry, if you have a building that's shaped say like that,
Why don't you go to the
Can it be-
list of buildings approved, Jeff, and then let's talk about those. Because the form-based zoning being adopted is it has to be one of these styles.
I'm thinking about adjacent buildings.
Oh, how it fits with the neighborhood?
Yeah, like with a 0 setback, or if there's, it's the only,
I mean,
The zero setback is Big Bean to the insurance company,
Right,
by
right,
that
right,
whole
redevelopment.
block is a zero setback.
it's already tight there already.
No.
Yeah. No,
No,
please,
don't worry
yeah.
about it.
Please, come on, Jeff. Let's hear
I
it.
brought it up last week. I'm not gonna, or last month, I won't bring it up. The 0 side setback in the north, south.
But it's not.
It's not, it's 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I would be willing to do the 50-foot front setback, because you'd create a courtyard space between adjacent buildings possibly if they're developing with a 0 setback and they touched each other.
Right.
You'd have a deep courtyard space amongst 3 adjacent
Would that be kind of like the Wiley House now?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, but the
That's
other
kinda-
problem with that is, I mean, you think about it, you're really not gonna get a zero setback approved unless you fire code that whole side, and then the person that builds next to you has to fire code their side. So you're putting that burden on others. Because there's X number of feet that have to be between buildings
Building
in new
code.
construction under building code. So you'd be putting a huge burden on. Whereas opposed to right in the middle of downtown, I mean, we have that now. And I think people in redeveloping are gonna be doing blocks or redeveloping existing spaces that are already touching. We're not creating more problems for the fire department than what they may currently have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's gonna be really hard
Just depends how
to,
dense it gets
Yes,
in the
yeah.
future.
When does it go to site plan? You said over 4 units?
yeah, but then there's building codes, it doesn't matter if you build one
I
unit.
just, like, if you site plan and they have one that's like set way back and you looked at the adjacent ones and you're worried about them, I guess being incongruent, you could address that there.
Yeah, that's an interesting question that I don't know the answer to, and I'll abandon that thought on the North Main Street. I don't need to get
But you
into that.
never get change when you go,
How does that work if you have more than one building on a lot?
Or you
The
could-
minimum, can you put the third building back?
Yeah.
More, as long as there is a building on it.
Yeah, so the front, yes.
yeah, 'cause we don't have actual, we have densities per building, but not per lot.
Right.
And we don't have any maximum lot coverage zone.
Right, but the third building can be, the front of it can be 200 feet from the road.
Of the third building? Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And some will be way back from the road
Right.
because of the way the lots are designed.
Yeah, some of those ones to the north, right, to the river, right?
Even though the
I know.
max setback is 10 feet, or,
From the road though, yeah. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so if someone pulls those buildings, those lots together, like there's
Yeah,
4 lots that are owned by one owner,
right.
right? If he merges lots and does a whole infill development, the front lots are going to be
No, if it's a single lot with like
20.
3 buildings on it, and the,
Well, there'll be lots of lots on the north side that's what will happen.
I think what Jeff's saying, let's say you had a big lot, you put 12 units in the front, but the max setback is 30 feet right now. You're basically capped. You can't go behind that. So you stopped at 30 feet. So the rest of the lot out back, 30
Is
feet,
not
is not
buildable?
buildable.
that's just a question, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Can the
Oh,
second,
I don't read it that way.
second building on the lot also have to meet the frontage, the maximum frontage setback?
Well, then it would never be developed, like the let's say what are we calling that, the staging lot? When they were doing the
Put like a
water.
note that says this only applies to the building or structure closest to the,
I think
First
that might be
building on the
clarity.
Yeah.
I think that's
But
not
you know,
bad.
don't read it that way, but it, you
Right.
can't not also read it
No,
that
but-
way, technically.
But to your point, the redevelopment of the vacant lot that is right before Houghton's, oh, sorry, now I'm really dating myself, right before the hardware store, Aubuchon. That will be redeveloped more than likely with multiple buildings. So to your point, one access in, some buildings that are, 20 feet max to the road, 1 building, 2 buildings, whatever, and then buildings behind.
Right,
And is this going to prohibit that?
right, yeah, that's the question.
I would like not to prohibit that. Or to,
Yeah.
I think we add some clarifying language there. That's the first building that fronts on a road. It has to meet this setback, or at least the front setback. I mean, please discuss. Does everyone else feel the same?
No, yes, you brought up a good point, because I think that I think we all agree with that premise. We're really talking about the building on the lot, the first building, or the building that fronts on the road,
Yeah,
Yes,
right, that has the frontage, the building itself on the street side or the sidewalk side, is not more than 20.
right.
We don't want to prohibit an owner to actually have whatever potential they have to redevelop their entirety of the lot. If they have a lot, cheaper.
I'm trying to think of an example right now.
I would, That's interesting, because if somebody wanted to phase their building, say that somebody's like, I'm gonna build these two buildings, one's gonna be 20 feet from the road, or 30 feet, and one's gonna be 200 feet from the road, will be whatever in between. And they say, but I wanna build the back building first, and then when I sell those, I'm gonna build the front building. Like,
Then they wouldn't be able to do that.
right, through.
No, on the site plan, we
Under site
would,
plan,
we
you would
would
say-
control phasing.
We would control phasing, we wouldn't say no. Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure we still have that.
Right.
ability to-
And then
Maybe
the
that's
code
someone-
enforcement is gonna say, will say, it didn't have to go to site plan, he sees that building, I'm phasing this, I'm building the first one out back, he's like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a control there too,
It's for ease of building though, for access.
get a variance.
Just saying, Sounds good.
Okay, so I think we're good with the actual.
Yeah, I'm gonna add that language
Okay.
about the front, building fronting.
Yeah.
the-
Yeah, so this is the
Yeah.
road building. Road fronting building. Okay, we haven't lost anyone. You're all coming back next month? Okay, so let's jump into the, I guess you had the special use permit first, right?
We got a couple, so, let's see.
That's page 5 of 96.
Oh,
And-
sorry, way in the beginning, okay, yep,
Okay, so 5 of 96.
let me get there. All
Okay.
right, so 32-9 is the section.
I think we have to still look at that change to the 32241B2. I think that, I had that question down. We need to double check.
B2.
A lot of this is just edits.
So 32.
That
so
was the one
40
that didn't match to the actual,
That one?
didn't match, yeah.
Okay, to the mill
Okay, so
section?
just double check that.
Okay,
And then we can, we'll just pass over the milled redevelopment until we get to that section. Okay, because then you can modify this to match.
Mhm.
All right. And then, yeah, so here is where the thresholds need to play in. Because developments, greater than 16 residential units.
that's my question, yeah.
And
do
you're
you-
right, we talked about that.
Needs to
Do
be
we-
divided out between-
Do we want it in each section, so like in the north, we say 12, anything
Right.
above 12?
Yeah, that's the threshold.
Would you just tie it to the residential density in the table?
No, I'd rather not, I'd put it in
I'm
the
gonna
zoning
spell it
section.
out.
No.
Use.
So
Yeah.
basically what I'm gonna have to do is in that section,
And maybe bullet it.
yeah, I have to basically break out the
Okay.
sub-districts.
So add the threshold, add sub-districts, okay. That's gonna be the same for B, multifamily housing, development proposing more than, whatever the thresholds are, and that's gonna be, so we're using VC as kind of a catch-all of all three? Do we have to, maybe we have to define that somewhere? Or
would
do you
have
wanna
change
spell
it.
out VCC, VC, and VCS, however, what?
Well, I mean, they're not consistent, so wouldn't we have?
No, that's why you'd have to put the threshold.
Each one.
For
But he-
each one, so the VC
Yeah.
wouldn't be applicable. We'd have to put VCC,
My question was more, I think, Bart, you're using VC as all three together,
Correct.
right? Because we're thinking of the village corridor, and the village corridor is made up of sub-districts, right? North, central, south.
At one point, you probably were going to try to treat them all as one.
Correct.
Similar, and now we've
Correct, and then it became, oh, that
three
is
different-
un-
essentially three different
unintended
districts now.
consequences.
Basically,
about its use right here, because it won't. it's not
No, I'm just
applicable.
talking about the use of VC versus defining each of them. Are we gonna,
I think
we
when
just
you're
have a
so-
catch-all of VC?
when you're just referencing the table, it doesn't really matter so much. But if you're going to specifically say this district has this requirement, then yeah, you need to get specific.
Because the table is the VC, and then we got South Central in North. Bart just needs to make sure that's defined somewhere within the zone.
it is, and I have it
Okay.
as a map, so if you look at 32-45B, basically, it's the establishment of the district via map, and basically what we show is the map that I showed earlier, which would have those districts defined.
So it's really saying more than the density permitted, or like that, right? Or break it down. more than the density permitted under the table. Just needs to be defined to make sure that it reflects the threshold.
Yes, I have to, might look different now because I want ease.
Say more units as proposed in the, or as
Right.
allowed per the table within the village corridor or whatever, within the DC.
Right, but I want to stop there for a second. Do you really want a fiscal impact for 8 units?
If it's downtown,
Why?
we have the right to wait, so.
No. Not here. This is in the zoning. You need a variance for that.
What's the fiscal impact usually of that?
Market analysis and how the proposed units will affect the town from a budgetary standpoint. So like school districts, stuff like water and sewer, not water and sewer, but like,
Can you not charge, or you cannot collect those impact fees unless you do this study?
no, not necessarily, no.
So you're jumping over to 3245E2A. Under this,
Is that
because we crossed all this out.
Yeah, but if you go
So
to,
3245E2A,
it's
E2,
on page 16 of 69,
yep,
F2A, 1,
oh wait, F2A. Where are you here?
So you're at 32.
You're at 32-45E2A.
There's two different.
45. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm down here on multifamily.
okay.
Okay.
Where E2 is.
Special permits are provided in the following section.
Yeah, you know what? It's probably just it's an error. It should be F.
So we need to clean this up,
That one needs to be cleaned now. That needs to be cleaned too.
this one here.
Yeah.
All right,
So yeah, it's a referencing error.
okay.
So a couple questions,
Yeah.
just so I can understand. So fiscal impact, because these would be apartments, all those budgets, taxes are all based on property taxes, but, so the individual renters aren't necessarily paying into those. So it's the reason that's all necessary is because you're putting more people in there, but not necessarily changing like how essentially the budget's developed from like the tax revenue.
It's not an ownership because it can be owned like say a condo or or multifamily residential. It's just more how does this development impact the town? Because
Yeah.
there's gonna be more people.
Maybe it may be better to explain what a fiscal impact study is.
Well, you kind of did that, and I'm just now going through with my turning on probably too many things that don't matter here. You're just really you have a lot more people than 4 people a town could probably absorb, but you start having 8s, 12s, 16s, 20s, like that's a lot more people you're infusing at one time, which.
Well,
I can see
it's
how that
what
might
is the
impact.
revenues coming in from the project to the town versus what is the expense
To take
in order to, if that development occurs to the town, and is it a positive, net positive, or is it a negative? That's what the fiscal impact study would show.
Yeah, I don't need to know it here. I'll probably have to look it up myself. Why, if people pay taxes or pay rents or those things, how come it's a person is paying it, why 8 people versus 16 people would appreciably change? And why is it not linear, essentially, is why my brain's going that way, but I don't need to know that here, and I don't want to get into that
Oh,
discussion here.
it could be parking,
Okay.
right? So let's say 8 people versus 10 is, and there's no parking requirement for the developer, but there's a more parking burden on the town.
Okay.
Water and sewer will have their own impact, so we don't deal with those anymore.
There's a higher chance for a fire,
could-
if there's more units,
yeah.
there's more people to serve
Right.
an ambulance, there's more impact on sewers. What about an increase in units instead of the total number of units? Because like if somebody does 16 unit redevelopment, why do a fiscal impact study if they already have 16 units in that building? What if it's an increase of a certain percentage of units? Or, if you've got a four unit lot and you want to tear down the building and put in 6 units, you're only increasing 2, so
But their impact study would be for the additional units, wouldn't it? I mean, that's how that would be developed.
additional units beyond a certain number.
beyond what they currently have.
Well, that's what I'm
If you
saying.
go with the percentage, 4 to 8 is 100%, right?
Well, no,
Which-
it could be, it doesn't have to be a percentage, it could be the number of units. Like, so if you have 16 units existing
Right?
and you go, to-
And you're gonna redevelop with 16 units?
you know, it's not an issue.
They haven't changed the impact on the town. I mean, unless
No,
their
I would-
development
I-
proposal is dramatically different.
I would agree, but does it meet the special use permit requirement? Which would cause it to do it.
To require a fiscal
Yeah,
impact.
exactly. And so why require someone to do it if you're not increasing the number of units?
Yeah,
my
it doesn't
point.
make sense to me either.
Then they ask for a waiver.
But what if you,
This is an
Cumulative
ordinance.
addition, yeah,
Less
so,
units.
all right.
now, what if you did less units? Say you had 8, now you only have 4, so you have more bedrooms. So the impact to the town could actually be higher because more bedrooms might
Right.
fit a family, which then means more students, right? So I mean, that's what I struggle with, is
You're saying-
understanding.
Again, the school impact.
Well,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
units
but
aren't necessarily
it's just,
bedrooms,
that's a
which is the
one-time thing.
Yeah, but then you have the recreation department too, then you have the library too,
Yeah.
right?
So, I think what I'm hearing is that
You're saying, number of bedrooms.
language, it would be more appropriate to have language if somebody is increasing the current use. Is that
I kind of see
the
it like.
concern?
What about
You're really talking about,
Or-
like, I guess if I were to put words into what you guys were saying, under special use permit, so you go all the way down to Charlie, there, fiscal impact study. All the way it says, with a cumulative addition of 16 or more dwelling units, where you put a comma or something that says about,
What page are you on, Zach?
oh,
16 of 89.
You're on 16?
yeah.
Okay. What number?
Section 32, TAC 45, Foxtrot,
Yeah,
2,
C.
A, 1, C.
C, okay. Yeah, I had that,
Letter stuff.
yeah.
Just sounds like you should put after with a cumulative addition of 16 units or more dwelling units, instead of saying units, you could say bedrooms or some kind of verbiage that speaks more to the concern of increasing that
I
and
think
then
it does.
beyond what was currently or previously there.
I think it does, because it says addition. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, cumulative addition.
So if they added 15, they wouldn't have to do a fiscal.
And then this would be the breakdown, right, by each, I think we're all in agreement on that. To the point is the cumulative addition.
Yeah, I guess if we all, yeah, if you read that as, yeah. if you read it that way, it
I
makes
think
sense
what,
to me.
I think Bart's language addresses your comment, Jeff, right? Cumulative,
Yeah, that's way
Cumulative
bigger
addition
than I was
of.
thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is a lot of units. Scenario or-
So if you had 4 and went to 16, you wouldn't have to.
You've got
do it.
12
You
additional
wouldn't have to do
units.
Which is a lot, but I get 12 a lot.
Yeah, because I was
What
thinking
about-
over 8
But
units.
What about the thresholds? Talked about before, the 8 to 12. Is that still,
I feel that's arbitrary. You know, you're just tying it to the units, to the density for each building. I think we need to think of it more as actually as linear. Like, what's the threshold where this is going to be a big impact to the town? How many units is that?
Which is why we went with 8 downtown.
Right, but it
But that's
is,
different than what this chart is showing. This-
well, currently, but
Currently.
this, I think we're in agreement that all of, that wherever we're looking at the 16, it's really by threshold. It's, the threshold is what's gonna trigger the special use permit within the sub-districts.
I don't think that makes
That's what I was
sense.
curious about too. I didn't understand how the 16 units tied to downtown where we're only allowed to do 8.
So,
Well, it's all village corridor, so it's all.
I don't think it, like, if we think about this, I think it matters where it is in this village corridor. I think we need to find what that threshold is and not tie it to what are we allowing per sub-district.
For special
Where's it
use.
matter where they're still gonna go to the same school? They're still gonna use the
You're
same
right.
services.
Yep,
But they're still not going to put, they're going to park 16
might be a different parking.
cars right downtown instead of at the north end of town where they may have space on the lot.
But we're allowing 0, you know, already.
Right, so if you double the size of the building from 8 units to 16,
you come to site plan, and you can ask those questions there. We're, I think the point of that area is to densify it most, and the outers, the south, not as much, whereas one space is required. Because there's a limited amount of space there already.
And to your point, they're not needing a fiscal impact study if they're doing a redevelopment downtown or on the North District, if they're only doing 8 or 12, because that's what the regulation is.
So
That's why I didn't understand how this is even applicable.
you could have two 8-buildings.
On a
And-
lot.
Or
I mean downtown.
the way this is written, if you, so let's say you demo, you're right. So I think the biggest impact would be you demo a unit building, you rebuild that, or 8, we'll say, and then you add a couple, maybe a 4 or a 4 in a duplex. Then you're under that threshold and you don't need a fiscal impact. But you're only adding 8 units anyways, or 6 units, in addition to what you're already redeveloping that exists.
So we're only really concerned about the fiscal impact if we add
Additional.
16 units.
16, that was, yeah, and we did discuss that. So it wasn't overly burdensome to have to do fiscal impact analysis on something less than 16 units.
Right. Because currently it's 3.
Right. They have to come and do a market analysis, fiscal analysis.
Yeah, I guess I'm questioning
Correct.
with 16, why is that the threshold?
Because that was the biggest building you could build in the form-based code. Once you go above that building, you add more, then it becomes a larger project, because
So if someone wants to put 2 16-unit buildings on, or a 16 and a 4.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to build a 20-unit building right now,
You can't,
you need a
under
variance.
the proposed.
you get a variance, do those require
Yes.
fiscal analysis?
So you get the variance for the building type for a 20-unit building,
Yeah.
then you still have to meet these requirements, because you're going over the threshold, unless they get variance for
Yeah,
those.
so I guess what is this doing it separately? Because you would already go through that process anyways. So how would you end
Oh.
up here?
Oh,
Different process.
yeah.
Yeah, you go to the zoning board for the variance, and that has higher thresholds for obtaining a variance, and discuss that.
So this is like a little bit easier than that process.
Right, you have certain criteria that
It's
you
a
need to
lot
meet.
easier.
Yeah,
So that's the advantage here, is that you're
Oh,
getting a
it's-
special use permit to build that 20-unit additional units versus going through the process.
No, you'd have to go get a variance to build more than 16, because in a building, the ordinance only allows, the maximum building size under the proposed ordinance is 16, under the ordinance. So any change of the ordinance, you have to go to get a variance from the zoning board.
So when you say it that way, it sounds like you wouldn't even use a special use permit when you're building something with more than 16
you would.
units.
So,
would,
so
'cause-
yes, so for instance,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
it's like, it seems like they're competing with each other.
Nope, yeah, so the zoning ordinance is controlling, if you're going outside that, you gotta get a variance, and there's 5 criteria that you need to meet to get that. And basically, you gotta prove hardship. What's your hardship for trying to do a use outside what's allowed in the zoning? If you were successful, or one was successful in getting that, they would still have to come to the planning board for the special use permit and demonstrate fiscal impact, because they're building a 20-unit building. As it's currently written, you build more than 16 accumulative, we'll say it's a vacant lot in this instance, you're gonna have to provide that information, you have to do the analysis.
So
So,
it's not repeating
no,
anything between them.
right.
That's what I think.
The-
The o-
and-
yeah.
Competing and repeating
Right.
each other.
And it would be highly unlikely that a zoning board would give a variance to a special use permit.
it has happened,
Okay?
but yes.
But that would be unlikely.
Yeah.
Right? Because the idea of a special use permit is just it's a smaller threshold than having to go to the zoning board.
Yeah, it's something we can discuss later,
Yeah.
the different processes. And
I wanted to make sure it was something that actually, like, the way it was structured actually didn't end in this kind of like dead end.
No, it wouldn't be any circumnavigation of this.
Okay.
Yeah,
How much does it cost?
What?
The fiscal market analysis
could be expensive.
Depends on the project. I mean,
for 14 units or 16 units downtown. I mean, I'm just,
Yeah.
an order of magnitude, is it $50 or $50,000?
I would say, yeah, you probably spend, depending on the project, 20 grand maybe. In a way,
I guess I'm all right with 16.
Yeah. So this is not driven by a building density or dimensional controls, thank you. Okay.
So the one question I had, the last phrase, and its housing market, I understand the fiscal impact, Bob, but what are we looking for in terms of the effect on the housing market?
will improve it? Like if they added the units, will it open up opportunities? What's the general area? So, let me preface this. I took this language that already exists
Yeah.
and
Alright,
and
so-
plopped it.
So, we're in a very good market right now,
Yes.
but there have been times where
Yeah, we're not.
we've had, 20% vacancy rates.
So we'll-
Okay, so we don't want to
it's basically,
take away from other housing or what,
Yeah. I think in the next few years, it might be probably understand what the results will be, but again, it gives us a point in time what the market is and where it's going, and will that benefit the town or not if we add these units? That's my understanding of it. It's just additional data
Right.
point in time.
And it could very well be that, there could be a market analysis that if someone's proposed micro units, well, they got a 20% vacancy where they're already at one bedroom, so do we want more?
Yeah.
So you
That's a
could
good
do
point.
that based on that?
The market analysis would actually
Yeah.
be driven by
Housing
that,
market?
by the housing, yeah, the market analysis would drive that.
No, but you could deny a development if you say,
We could,
we feel like we have too many of these units in town.
I
Yep.
think we could question the market analysis.
what if they were $1 million units? Real luxury thing, is that it? Or is that?
If we had bigger, maybe less units, but bigger spaces, give people opportunity to rent together, roommates, that cost of living is pretty high for people.
Like
So if there's enough
co-living?
vacancy,
Mhm.
and maybe it's because people are living together somewhere else, or
I did that through the mid-20s.
Yeah.
Late 20s?
Yeah. 20s?
But the point being is that, for this permit, it's very project-specific.
Yeah.
Right? It's, it's the impact on that particular project. And if a market analysis is required, it's what are the specifics of that project? To your point, be that, hey, here's this, this type of housing concept that doesn't exist in Newmarket, so it would be a positive impact. The market is showing that people want this, but nothing here in town that offers that. And that's what the market analysis would show.
We had this discussion about the one units across the street, the one
Yeah.
bedroom units across the street. I question, is there really a need for 41 bedroom units?
Probably, a lot of young people.
Because people don't like living together anymore, right? Yeah, I'll do it, or leave.
I don't know, we'll find out.
Yeah, especially at that price.
I mean, I think at that point in
Okay.
time, there was no housing stock.
Yeah, that's true.
That's,
Can I just point out something real quick? On
Yeah.
page 13,
Um,
structure height, back to the previous page. There's just a typo.
okay,
Oh.
we'll look at that.
yeah, let's, not jump around, please, Scott. 'Cause we're
Yeah,
gonna get
I'll look
to
in
we're
this,
gonna
thank
get to
you.
each, all right, but, all right, so, so special use permits, and then we'll get into the ordinance on it for any other questions. Okay,
I will,
So we could take the Polish American parking lot, which is empty, devoid of any housing.
Yep.
Putting
Okay.
15 units,
So they're
with
not-
no parking,
this.
Yep.
and there would be no analysis
correct.
of its impact on town.
They could do, well, one 8-unit building and one 4-unit building,
They could do,
or all townhouses.
they could do one building.
Yeah, and not
No.
only that, they could make beer free for the rest of their life.
The building type that allowed there is 8 units, so they're gonna build, that you're allowed.
Limit to-
They need a variance. Yeah, so those separate buildings, so we gotta think about that. What's the cost of doing 8? I think you save money when you have larger buildings. Instead of 8 individual buildings, that's because you're only allowed 8 units per building.
There's no method to get more than 8.
variance.
Right.
Yeah.
So they would have to come to the zoning board, say, here's my hardship, X, Y, Z.
And I have a unique property, not to jump in, but, you
Well,
know,
the
my,
five criteria, you gotta meet the five
right,
criteria.
and
yeah.
my property is unique in that
Yeah.
it is, you know, 5 times the size of any abutting property.
Okay, so when we were discussing, somebody has a existing 14 unit, and they want to change it to a 16 unit, they're not even allowed to do that without getting a variance.
Correct.
Right.
I was concerned about when the prior discussion is that these buildings that could maybe accommodate it, existing buildings cannot now,
But
without a
they,
variance.
but their,
You're locking into that form base now.
Yeah, the 8, yeah.
their conversion may not even trigger anything. You know,
Good.
because you're saying that, you know, unless they're tearing down the whole building
No, I mean, they have like 2
Yeah.
big units, and they want to split them into 2 units, and they've got.
to get more units.
Yeah. they
Yeah,
got
that would,
12 to
well,
14,
Can't
that
do
would
that.
trigger,
you trigger variance.
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Because they're already non-conforming, and they can't make it more, he would get denied because he can't make it more non-conforming.
Right. Without saying, I can't even fix this
Hardship.
building up without
Yeah.
What?
2 units or something.
Okay, so just to move on here, so special use permits, we just need to check the references. The
Yep.
the trigger of the 16, where everyone's good, right, on that one? So it's just the double checking the references. Okay, no thresholds on that section. Okay, now we get to
Cumulative addition.
the cumulative addition. Okay. All right, so back on page 14, we have talking about the base zoning districts. I think, you know, Bart added the language in the streets. So we're all good with that, right?
Yeah, I'll change
Okay.
it to 30 on, it says C2.
Okay, C2
Or,
is gonna be
it's,
the setback
B,
changes.
Yeah, BC2.
Okay,
That'll be turned to 30.
30, so this all
Yep.
matches.
Yep.
We're all, I'm on page 15, the top, C,
Okay.
2A. Bart's just gonna make sure that all of this language is consistent with the dimensional table. We already talked about the 100 feet, we're good with that, right?
Yep.
The planning board, through special use permit, we can modify these roadside, rear setbacks, structure heights, building type, where they don't have to go get a variance. They have to get a variance from the number of units, but not for any of these other dimensional controls.
Well, there's one exception, I forgot about this, and we can take this out if you want, it's building type. So here's the, what should I say, the philosophy. Does the planning board want control over the building type through a special use permit, if it's a permit, or do you want the zoning board to have it go through that process? So the way I look at this is like a planning type of issue, more so than a judicial issue.
Can you give an example?
Well, I think it comes back to 12 unit. I'm proposing a 16 unit.
And it's permitted.
You're allowed to, yeah, so you're allowed to vary from the dimensional, because this is a dimensional control through a special use permit.
So you want the planning board to be like the zoning board?
Which it does in certain instances already. Through these,
On the roadside, rear, structure,
and now,
If they don't do one of these building types.
right, you go to the planning board for that. So that's my question. Do you want the zoning board to weigh on that first, or
I
do
feel
you
like
want?
his concern with the center area, with how, I feel like there's a lot of hot building types, probably most so in that area. That might make the most sense using the special use permit process there to deviate from the building type.
yeah, and isn't, but you have that building type.
Yeah, I know.
Aren't you referring to it?
So I want, yes, I am referring to it. I want the board to understand what the process is. They're not going to the zoning board for a variance for building type. They're coming to you for a special use permit.
Right, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Because that's the whole idea of planning and form-based zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone like that?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll make sure. it's a crucial thing to understand, I think.
It's
That,
not a hardship.
Right,
all right, cool.
yeah, does it fit?
Right,
Yeah, okay.
all right, cool.
Yeah, we're all good with that. Okay, so these would be, we'd have to find this. The proposed use is suitable for the location, will not cause measurable adverse impacts to the environment and public safety. I think that gets to your point, Jeff, about the river and, you know, as far as setbacks, relative to the buildings along the river, per se. Building type consistent with the permitted zoning district, because we're gonna call those out. And setback and structure height consistent with either setback, structure height, or both of existing buildings. Again, I think all correct is what we're talking about for buildings. So is everybody good that this would be the criteria we would follow if we're going to actually grant a special use permit relative to these particular dimensional controls and building type controls?
I guess my only question, we codify all these and for some reason we realize this isn't working based on whatever marking conditions, or we just realize it's an onerous thing, a number needs to be tweaked. What's our recourse? We just basically convene.
This process you're
What
in
we're
right
doing
now.
right now, because the M2A isn't working,
So,
or
yeah.
the B1's
So
not
we
working.
find out that the 16 doesn't work for the special use because the market analysis is
Right.
for that size, then we can always go back and change that.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, the planning board can always initiate a zoning change, so they make recommendations to town council, and town council ultimately votes on it.
So
Yeah.
And we had the public hearing.
Yeah, we
Okay.
usually,
You could do
discretion, planning board,
It
public
takes like
input.
3 months.
Okay,
Well,
that's what I'm
yeah,
trying to get an idea
if you're
of.
lucky.
Like,
Oh,
it's not, it's written into law, so to speak, but it's not forever.
Right, it can be changed, yeah, exactly.
yeah. This B1 hasn't been changed in, not in my tenure, 20-something years. You know,
Tell
it's
me
just,
if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
really quickly, in
Yeah.
one word if you want to.
Yeah.
Like, no building or assembly building shall exceed 100 feet in length parallel except between here and there, while the maximum length shall be 50 feet.
Right.
yeah, that was in this,
Ivy's recommendation. Are you honing in on accept? What word are you honing into?
So that we want the buildings to be shorter in length
Correct.
downtown.
Correct.
And we have a block that's like over 100 feet long building.
That's correct. But do we want to replicate that?
That's what this is saying.
Right. So I think any type of
Yeah.
redevelopments, you want those spaces, 50 feet.
But there's 0 side setback.
Right. But the building width can only be 50 feet.
Or assembly building.
Correct. So townhouses, 50
It
feet
doesn't count buildings on adjacent lots. Different.
no,
No.
it's per lot.
per lot.
So you good? All right, sidewalk and parking standards, we talked a lot about this. I think that, minimum width of 5 sidewalks. Oh, so you were looking up sidewalks, right?
Yes, this is a recommendation from DPW,
All right.
right there.
And 8 feet for commercial. Okay, and a maximum of 50. Okay. We talk, parking may not be located between the buildings and the street. So to the side of the building and back, unless they get a variance.
Diagram might be good there.
Okay.
Um,
Shielded from the street. And again, this is just anything that comes to site plan.
This is in the zoning. yeah.
Parking requirements for residential here are the following. This is what we decided last month.
Just to add, state law did change, so I
Okay.
added the number 5 there.
Oh, good.
Basically, the new RSA allows for the applicant to propose by right an alternative parking plan.
Okay.
So I just made the reference. I think when we get to it, I can go over it, but
Yeah.
it's just something
Okay.
that we have to add.
I think that the number 2 is D2 isn't quite.
Bart said he's gonna do a diagram. Would that be better? what's your concern on that?
Parking may not be located closer to the street than the building.
Between
Or
the
in front.
buildings and the street? The front of the building and the street?
Because you could, it says between the building and the street, but you could be adjacent to the building and closer to the street than in front of the building, the way I read it. They're located between the building and the street. Parking may not be located closer to the street than the front face of the building or something.
I think you'll show that on a diagram. Buildings here, right, and no parking.
Well, if you do a diagram, I guess.
I'm gonna do a diagram. I'm gonna have two streets. I'm gonna have a corner lot basically. And
Well, then there's no parking.
and then yeah,
Don't confuse everybody.
Yeah.
The
They'll
first
think-
thing
I-
on a multi-building parcel too, the same concern. that I
Or
had before.
any buildings along the street.
on the street.
Yeah.
Street fronting, parking may not be located between any street fronting buildings or closer to the street. You know what I mean? Because it literally says between the building and the street, not like adjacent to the building, but closer to the street on the same lot. That's why I read it.
So
Adjacent but closer to the
it's
street.
in front of,
how's that possible?
You can be on the right-hand side of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not standing between the building and the street. I'm standing
Oh, yeah, he's
adjacent to
being
the
literal.
building. Yeah, I'm reading it literally.
Yeah.
because it's a-
So parking may not be located
In front of the building.
in front of the building and the
In front,
street.
like
Front of the
Or
building.
any
full-
closer- any closer to the
forward.
street than the
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
The frontage, right, or whatever you're qualifying as the frontage.
That's right.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
walk the
that's
entire
right.
frontage of the- and you slide the whole front lot line back. to
But
the
he's
tip of the
saying,
building.
yeah, he's saying street on a corner lot, you have you have
Double frontage.
double frontage. One's a side, they don't, do they have to meet both?
That's
one-
double frontage. Yeah. So they
Double
need both
frontage.
front setbacks.
So you have to be
Okay.
like around the back of the building.
Yeah. It's
You
it's
can't
out
even be
back.
adjacent to the building. You've got to be
The
behind.
parking's out back
Yeah.
in that case.
Yeah.
The diagram would do it, but the language I think is.
In-
We'll clean up the language
the
and then
language so that-
we'll do both. May not be located
So
in
make
front
sure
of the
that
building.
whatever the language says, Jeff can explain
Closer to the
one of
street
his
than the building.
clients when he's doing a
Closer.
survey, when he's doing a project.
Closer to the street than the building.
I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead.
That's not between us.
The, so the no requirements for units, I know we talked a lot
All
about
right, hold on, guys. Hey, Zach.
this alternative parking plan.
Yep.
Is that something that we could request for the center? To try to get a handle where we expect them to park? Do we have any say in where are they going to park when we're not asking for any spaces?
No, not in B. So in the village corridor, no, because we don't require it. But in the south and north, yes. So for instance, we'll say they're on a tiny lot, we'll say 5,000 square feet, but they're building a 8-unit building, but state law allows for them to find lots outside, other lots to park on within, I think it's, I don't want to misspeak, but pretty wide radius.
All right, I get that, and I don't want to.
But it also, there can be, planning board can require study and be peer reviewed. So they require a study from the applicant, and planning board can say, we want this peer review, and
But only for the north and south.
correct. Because right now, we're allowing nothing in the center.
Yeah, it wouldn't trigger 5.
Yeah.
Bigger cities, like in Portsmouth, if someone wanted to put, or it might be a bad example, or downtown Dover, somebody wanted to add 15 and say we're going to, it's a tiny lot, and they're just going to occupy the entire lot with their building and provide 0 parking.
I don't know their zoning ordinance, so maybe they require one space.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious if other, I don't really know what other municipalities have required of, like a, town would have required a single parking space for all these units.
But I think
Come
what
on.
I come back to is always, we have so little space there.
I agree.
Parking's
I'm
very
just curious.
expensive. It takes up a lot of real estate. And the way I look at it is that's the most already impacted area in town. And that's where our commerce is, densely populated area. You know, if we were adding more cars there, that means more congestion. You know, more space that could be devoted to more green space or, you know, buildings or residents. So I know the reality is this is a car-centric town, but, you know, does it always have to be? And is that, I don't know, for this area in town? Because people want to choose there, to live there, and maybe don't need a car. And what's transportation going to be?
I don't disagree with
Yeah.
you at all.
Market driven.
And market driven, yeah.
I'm
So
just curious what,
I don't know.
if other
Yeah,
towns have.
I'm wondering
Yeah.
what the success is to a developer for them to get it fully occupied.
That's the other side of the question. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the big question,
Yeah.
that, you know, they're gonna have to decide. If our rules are, you know, for downtown, we would like them not to offer parking. What kind of group does that drive for residency?
I guess I would like to think that the market is creative enough. We've set a pretty low bar for them. If it's financially doable for them, a way to get people to rent out those units at whatever price point makes sense for the redevelopment. And if it doesn't, then the building doesn't get redeveloped, it stays as it is.
Because we don't have businesses here that would drive employment in town. You have to go to Portsmouth, or you gotta go down to, you know, someplace else.
A lot of people work from home too.
Yep, 100%,
Yeah.
and that's a valid point.
And there's service industries too that you would populate with
There you go.
commercial. People would be able to live and work in the same town. Like to your point, you're not able to do now. If you're able to develop
That's
more
true.
commercial mixed use,
Mm.
you get more cases, whether it's service industry like waitress, bartender, right? A couple of those places that opened up recently, cafe shop.
The thing I struggle with is the same thing about, you know, just the whole parking issue. I mean, no matter what we do, we have a parking issue. And are we just adding to it?
Do you think
Um,
downtown would explode if we built a parking garage? Like, would it,
Yeah.
like, would, like, literally, would they, somebody would be like, oh my gosh, now we don't have to provide any parking and there's parking. Let's just go down and build a whole bunch of new eight unit things. I'm not saying it would be
Yeah.
bad, that would be kind of what we're
Mm.
almost trying to do, right?
So we're kind of doing that now, right, aren't we? Where the old red shack used to be, that's town parking, right?
Yeah, but the town doesn't charge for
Right.
it, right?
I feel
I
like
think
they're,
that's
You know, if
probably
you have
where
a
it would
reserved
go.
spot, there's a fee.
Reserve spot or just be able to park overnight?
Overnight
I
parking.
thought
So
it was
overnight
like on a
parking.
month-to-month basis.
But you can park it overnight. It doesn't
Yeah.
give you a reserve spot.
Over
Okay.
here,
Yeah.
like, sort of that lot, or you mean the one
No,
down the bowling alley?
The one by the
Across
bowling
the bowling
alley
alley,
and then the
yeah.
one down on Bryant Rock by Bay Road.
Yeah, down that way.
Yeah.
I don't think we open up B Street.
Are those full?
All right, I opened up a can of worms.
Good discussion.
I'm just optimistic that you set a minimum, that doesn't mean everyone's gonna follow it. If the market doesn't allow for it, no developer's gonna put their neck on the line to build a building they don't think people will use. So if they're not confident things without parking are gonna rent out, they're not gonna build it. I think they're probably more risk averse than that, so I feel like I'm optimistic that they'll create a
So-
solution to it.
Are we building rules and, for lack of a better way to say, it, rules and regulations for something that someone may never build? And then we'll be
Giving that
here,
option, yeah.
then doing the same thing, saying, you know,
Right.
hey, all the work we put in, it didn't drive the business like it was, like we did with the other end of town, right?
I would say B allows more creativity.
I hope so. I
Yeah,
hope so.
a lot more flexibility
Yeah, I hope so.
than C and A, the north and south districts. So I'm not saying, I mean, these are low thresholds. And yeah,
No, I mean, you have a better feel for it, like what other towns are doing and what would drive success. And if we think this will drive success, then we have nothing to lose.
I'll say that saves town on a Saturday night is the closed bank. Allowing
Yeah.
parking
Or
there.
a
That's
Monday night.
That's a lot of free parking.
Uh-huh.
Like on a weekend night, Stone Church is busy, restaurants are busy. That
Yeah.
parking lot's got 4 cars in the drive-through, you know, and
Right.
every lot's taken, every spot's taken.
I feel like
If someone were to buy that and restrict that parking, that would that might cause some.
Is there a
Yeah, we
way
might
to
see-
encourage other businesses to do similar to what the bank does? with
Yeah,
parking?
it just doesn't prohibit it. Yeah, so that they
The
can.
demand might, the thing is like that, where a developer says, great, I'll charge that
Right.
person for my parking and I'll make more money than I would just giving it to my tenants.
Well, this already happens, so the backside of the bank, there are spots, and those traditionally were for that apartment building that has no parking,
Right.
that's right behind it. I mean, this goes decades back, and people would pay the bank for the parking spots up along the retaining wall to that apartment building.
Can people, you can't do like an under building parking, right?
You
Because
can.
it's got
Or
a, so are
you can, as long as if it's on Main Street, you can have commercial in the front,
under building parking in the back?
under building in the back.
Can you make a height exception for people that do that, to incentivize people?
You get the waiver, special use permit.
And then you can build a building taller.
Sorry, what we say 40, 50 feet? 50 feet.
If you think out the redevelopment of the post office, that is the perfect
That's what I'm
example,
thinking, yeah.
where you're gonna have parking in that maybe lower, or if they can put them together with the property in the back,
Right.
how you can come into different levels or in and out. That whole Main Street side would be commercial,
Yeah.
what you visually see.
I was just thinking, if you're giving space at the ground floor, let people go taller.
And
We can.
that's built in. Okay, moving on to building types. I think my only comment here was that I thought we were gonna break this down for where they're actually permitted. So people could say, oh, I wanna, go up on the north, and these are the ones.
I thought
Did
we
we
were going to
decide?
permit all these.
They're permitted everywhere.
Right, so we might have to adjust that because, based on this discussion, the
Okay.
12, 8, and 16,
All right.
because the courtyards won't be. Well, that's the question. I guess technically you can build a 8-unit courtyard and it still look like
Yeah,
that.
it's
So
just the
yeah,
max
so
is 16.
does anyone feel strongly about a building type not belonging anywhere that's being proposed? 'Cause I think it says up to language in a lot of the it says 32-90. There you are. Yeah, max. Right. Max. Yeah, so all these are maximum. So maybe a 8-unit courtyard is still. So you can do the building type,
Yeah.
let's say the courtyard, but you compare with the the dimensional control and say, okay, I only build a 8-unit courtyard. 32-90. That's the building types.
Oh, 8.
Yeah,
Get
there we
it?
go.
Cool. And then I'm juxtapose is page 34 for dimensional control. And my question right now is.
Oh,
Are
it
we
may
go-
not, because it's the max.
Max,
lengths.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So we had this
Yeah.
discussion.
Just want to confirm that.
Yeah, it's just really the style,
Yeah.
and then the limitations, and then you pull them out. So you did actually kind of make a table.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, everyone's good with this?
Do we say the number of buildings on a lot?
No.
So you can have as many as you want, or?
Yep. Yeah, we're regulating the buildings, not acre per or units per acre.
As long as they're in single ownership.
It could be, yeah, condominiums too. Yeah. I don't think we care about the ownership because it's just we're more concerned about the buildings themselves and what they comprise of, how many units they comprise of.
Okay. We're all good to move along. Permitted use is F, which is on the top of page 16, we discussed.
Let me find it. So that's page
Yeah, we discussed
28.
that.
28.
Uh,
Yeah, 28.
Oh, you updated
Office
the
complex.
permitted use.
I got rid of office duplex, 'cause one, we don't define it, two,
Okay.
doesn't make sense. I mean, you can just combine it with mixed use or office.
Yeah.
So I never, I thought it was redundant, so I just axed it.
You already kept that, I think, at 32.9B. Is that reference supposed to
Where
Yes.
are you,
be? Okay,
Jeff?
you already got that.
You caught that?
Sorry, I just didn't.
Jeff, where were you?
On 32.9B,
What's the page?
that first,
Page.
page 5.
Yeah,
That-
special use permit.
yeah,
Oh,
that's-
oh, you're
about
going
the
back.
reference- the
Okay, yeah,
references.
yeah.
I
He's
just
gonna
caught it
check
when
all
I
that.
was just looking at it.
Yeah, we're gonna clean up the references, yep.
And
Okay,
just on page 6,
yep.
G,
That's where we're going to next.
okay, oh yeah, just because it's got a blank there.
Okay,
Oh,
so,
yeah, that was on purpose. Oh,
Okay.
Yep,
so this is what we really talked about, so that, how we already have some small mixed use and, you know, along the main street or, you know, North Main, Exeter Road. Like if somebody had like a home occupation, home-based business, you know, what was gonna trigger? Did they have to keep it commercial on the street side?
did something there too, I'll explain in a second.
Okay, go
Yep.
ahead.
I thought I heard something. All right, so I was seeing how will this play out based on existing buildings, and I added A1, a conversion of an existing single-family or duplex building into a multifamily that shares the lot with a commercial use. So basically, I could think of a couple properties on North Main where this could be applicable, and so what in this scenario what would happen is if those single families were turned to a fourplex, that would be fine, and the building can stay there in the existing footprint. So it's like internal conversion. So given A1 is a subclause of A, it's still, if they were to propose something larger, say a 5-unit, that wouldn't be permitted.
That's the exception
Yeah.
to the exception.
Correct. Exception
Okay.
to the exception.
Okay,
It's easy to absorb in about 30 seconds.
yeah. Okay,
So this is really trying to accommodate existing buildings.
yeah,
Some of these maybe we don't want torn down. We want, they have character. So,
Right.
Yeah. So it allows for flexibility, low impact flexibility, add more units within the existing, single family, without not being as burdensome. So we're allowing for some flexibility for existing infrastructure or buildings. If that makes sense.
so if the lot is vacant,
You got to add a commercial.
you have to add commercial.
Yep.
But if you add it's a vacant lot and you want to, it's an existing. Yeah, so if you're a vacant lot, you can do a commercial use, because I'm going now backwards, right?
Mhm.
I can have a home-based occupation or business on a vacant lot, I can build that. And I don't have to put that fronting on Main Street, or fronting on the road.
You do. If your lot is vacant,
Yeah.
you must have commercial in the front.
If at least one of the following conditions exists. No residential units. Oh, okay.
Yes, the only time you could have
Yeah.
residential dwelling fronting to the
Right.
street would be, is if you're converting a single-family
Yes.
duplex building into multifamily building.
So that's the conversion.
Shares the lot.
And then you don't have to have it.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you have an existing building
Yep.
with a commercial use
Yep.
on the ground floor at all,
You have to keep that.
you have to keep
Correct.
it. Even if it's a single owner that just has like a business on the ground floor and lives upstairs.
That's the one we talked about, like,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
a
that's
beauty shop, right? Because that's fronting on the,
so
on,
yeah, exactly. So what I was thinking about was one. I was thinking the welder, not the welder, the metal artist. He has his buildings out back, that commercial building, and his house is up front.
Oh, those are on the same lot.
Yeah.
okay.
Was that the Oyster River Real Estate?
I don't know if that's all
So
commercial.
that's residential on the
know?
upper level and commercial on the lower level.
So they
So,
would have to keep the commercial.
They would have to have a commercial presence in the lot. Yeah.
okay.
I think it would disincentivize any people in the existing house opening up commercial because they'd be forced to keep it. commercial, right?
I didn't follow that.
You're forced to keep commercial.
Have a commercial? Could be,
Yeah, if commercial already exists, commercial
Yeah.
use excluding home occupation, home business, so,
Let's say
Um,
next week.
yeah,
passes,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then in a month.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna open up, I don't know, a candy shop in the front of my house.
yeah,
I'm gonna open up a candy shop. I'm like, I just wanna have it for 10 years and then close it and then be done with it.
Mhm.
I can do that. Or
And
once
you
I
s-
convert it to commercial and start using it as commercial, it
You-
has to stay commercial.
Correct, on the front. So only the units that front the main street. You can have first floor,
Once you make it
Behind.
commercial, they can't go,
correct.
can't go back to
We
residential.
want the commercial, yeah.
because then it would fall under A1.
'Cause they can't
It'd
go
be a
back to it.
conversion. Or the redevelopment B.
Right, so the idea over time is we want the commercial element, for the most part, to populate the first floor.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it would disincentivize somebody doing something like that, is my point, like a short, like I'm gonna have a business until I get old and then I'm gonna close it and then it's gonna be residential. I'm just gonna live here. I guess they could close it if they want to, they won't get in trouble.
Right, it'll be vacant, I
And start
guess.
living in it, or they wouldn't even be able to live in that part of the building, I guess. I
That
don't
part
know,
of the building,
This
yeah.
part of, this has bugged me.
it might be better if we look at it the opposite way. And not to dwell on it, because you can work on this, right? That residential dwelling units within the ground floor of a building are permitted to directly front North Main Street, or Exeter Road, provided.
So you want the other way. Residential
I'm
can
trying to
exist in
get
those.
like a, yeah,
Residential can exist in these conditions instead of saying no residential can exist unless.
it might be more easy to,
So, with the example you, wouldn't that be a home occupation, home-based business? Like,
Could
if
be,
you're
yeah.
doing a wholesale redevelopment of the property such that it's really no longer a home occupation, like it's a full-on, like, free now, or I don't know what makes.
Right, so we-
case.
well, there's a definition,
Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
definition for it,
But that's
so.
as of a certain date, so if you do it in the future,
right?
Alright.
you're stuck in it. If
I
you
see
had
what
it
you're
10
saying.
years ago, they're not gonna make you,
You do it after this
Keep
passes,
it.
then you're after the date.
yeah, if you do it after
Right.
it passes, you're not. Sorry, it's not called grandfather.
No, no, I'm okay with the way it's written, I think.
Okay,
I mean, it used to be the whole ground floor, when we were originally discussing, it had to be commercial. Now it's just.
right, we were trying to get exceptions.
Yeah.
So everyone's
Puts a
fine with how it,
double false wall, like
okay,
6 inches behind the front of the building,
Yeah.
you call it commercial.
Yeah, I mean, it's just those front units have to be commercial. And then, again, is allowing for flexibility.
yeah,
That's any person's door.
okay.
What
Could
the
some-
Oyster River-
So
Could someone
let's
come
just-
and say that there's extreme hardship? No one's coming for businesses. I mean, if there,
You get a
could that
variance.
happen?
If you get a variance of any front, yeah,
So-
you can try.
That's the question.
Special-
Do you want a
special
special
use
use permit?
Yeah,
Okay.
For, if there's,
I'm
So-
90 and I just want to live here 5
Yeah,
more years and
right.
sit in the front porch.
Okay.
Instead of,
so people are good with the current, people understand this, it's clear?
Yeah, I think I like the intent of it, which is to incentivize, or not even incentivize, it's
Okay.
requiring commercial
Yeah.
along the front street. And if what you're saying, I feel like it's, I don't know, that is a use case that could happen, but I struggle to see that
Okay.
playing out. And if it does, then cross that hill and get to it. But
Where everyone's good with the intent, right? I mean, that
Right.
was, okay. And then and Bill's good with the language. I'm having trouble processing it, but it's just probably because of the longness of the day. Um,
But it speaks to our intention of no residential unit. We're trying not to have
Mhm.
it.
Yeah,
Spaces
unless,
right.
right, there's exceptions,
right.
right? And Bart's trying to, call exceptions that would permit you to have residential fronting the street.
yeah, it's a higher barrier to have residential facing the main street.
Right.
You have to meet one of these exception criteria.
Yeah.
So we're allowing for
Yeah,
those
the problem, Zach,
smaller.
is
Yeah.
that the real estate people make more money on housing than on commercial. And so unless we them to put in commercial, this is going to be all residential. And then there won't be a downtown.
This other side of that token too is we want to allow for small scale residential development to occur as well.
Right.
especially existing houses. Maybe they want to densify a little bit, going from 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 units without, putting this burden that, oh, no, sorry, you need commercial in front now. You got to this is not possible.
And so they don't do anything, they don't
Yeah.
upgrade the building, they don't add more housing units, because it's too burdensome. Yeah, that definitely was the intent. Okay. All right, mill redevelopment.
So I took the M1 language, the old M1, a new section at the end of the zoning ordinance, and just transposed that language to this new section. Nothing's changed besides references.
So you kept it all
I did.
as is?
Yep, and I said if any type of, basically it's like if anyone is doing a redevelopment in the mills or anything, they gotta follow that process.
Okay, it's just,
And the reason why.
okay, go ahead, yeah, we won't get into it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't wanna.
So we can always change just that section.
Exactly, and,
Right.
I think just more thought needs to be put through
Yeah,
that. 'Cause a lot
I would
thought-
agree with that.
Because a lot of thought was put into it already.
Yeah, I
so-
mean, all of a sudden, the lot gets redeveloped across the street from the mills. If we, right?
That one can right now, but it's tied to the mills.
It's tied to the
It's tied
mills,
to the mills,
right.
so it is, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that,
But
so I
zero-
understand where you're
zero-
coming from on that,
yeah.
all right. So everyone's good with that, or just, okay, because that's specific to the mills? So we're really not thinking about any other kind of redevelopment of what's been developed?
I think we're gonna come back to it.
Okay.
We should, we should.
So, the next step would be moving this to a public hearing, but, Bart would clean up from our discussion tonight, the proposed ordinance. And then that would go to a public hearing that would be posted. Is the process that we would notify all of the landowners within the district? Do we
Technically,
have to?
we don't have to, but I'm going to.
Okay, good.
Once you get over 100, the statute says you don't have to, but I don't think that's right
I
in this
agree.
case, so it's a big change, and we need to hear from all affected residents.
So, do you motion to move it to public hearing? We'll just,
Uh,
or put it on the agenda for next month?
I can put an agenda. next
Everyone's
month,
good with
yeah.
that? Okay.
Is it our public hearing or the town council?
Our
Ours.
public hearing.
But it's discretionary. The board can
Yeah.
either make a recommendation tonight to town council or hold a public hearing and make a
You
recommendation.
know,
But
the council's gonna wanna get into preliminary public hearings. Do you, Scott? Don't you think the council would want the planning board to go through the public hearing process before anything goes to the council?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay,
It would certainly build confidence.
I think, yeah, I think that's the best, because then if it ends up being a lot of concerns, just revisit it and, then then the
Right.
board can make the recommendation, so work on it a little more. So I think it's prudent.
okay, so that's moving to May 13th. Okay. All right,
Can I just say one more thing?
yeah?
Definitions, we added a couple, in collaboration with code enforcement officer, we're changing the definition, or proposing to change the definition of structure height. Let me go find it first.
33 of 96, I think.
Yep, basically, we're matching building code.
Okay,
So, because what we have come across time and again, zoning has its own definition, and architects using the building code have theirs, and they sometimes don't match, and it's basically an efficiency thing.
okay.
Right, and on that, the first word should be the,
The,
instead of the.
yeah,
Mm-hmm,
my fingers didn't catch the T.
good.
Yep. So that, height, so yeah, so it's
Okay.
just,
We have this with, Keene there.
yes,
So you good on?
I'm good.
Okay, all right. Next agenda item. So that is gonna go to May.
Oh,
Something else?
yeah, I'm not sure if you want to discuss it now, it's just could people just look at the definitions, prior to the next meeting? I changed lounge too.
Oh, yeah, that's right, you were
Yeah.
just cleaning that
Yeah,
stuff
it's cleaning
up.
stuff up, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, we're not,
kind of reflect
Yeah.
reality.
okay. Let's do reports first. Jeff, anything on Concom? Anything on Concom?
Thursday, so I
Okay.
have not met since,
So
I
nothing.
think I gave a report last month.
Right,
Okay.
about the, that's coming up, I can, the wetland, prime wetland maps. So I got the farm mark,
Oh, nice.
Oh.
so that'll be, presented to you all.
Great.
And then eventually it's gonna come here, so,
Okay.
for review.
Shane, CIPs, has that started
Nothing yet,
meeting
no,
yet?
no.
Okay. For new members, the planning board appoints representatives to different committees or commissions. It's just under the current town charter. So these are the Jeff's reporting he's the appointee to the Conservation Commission as a planning board position there. Jane's on the capital improvements.
And then,
Okay.
Patrick was energy environment, but
Right.
we'll
So we'll have to
discuss
figure
that.
that out.
Just, there are voting memberships, I think, on all the committees, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they're voting members. They're actually under the charter.
Yep, voting members.
Full voting members. And then Scott is on the reverse of that, Scott's appointed to the planning board as the town council representative to the planning board. And if the town council rep actually doesn't show up for a meeting, a town council appointee can only fill that position. So like an alternate, we couldn't
Right.
appoint an alternate into that position.
It's a non-voting position.
No, he is a
It's
voting
voting.
position.
Scott's voting?
Yeah, yeah, under statute.
Maybe it's not Concom. One of them.
It may not be.
It is plan
but-
board,
yeah.
kind of.
Anything to report on council?
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that the election is on the 13th, and that's for a new commission for the town. And if you're interested in participating in that, you can sign up from 16th to 25 of April, so that's next week. I think that's going to be Wednesday of next week. Last time we did this, apparently like 30 people showed up. There's 9 positions. So we're quite proud. And then we are doing a wastewater master plan, and the main thing that's come out of that is our water is A, in need of cleaning and repair, and B, it's too small.
Up off Bennett Way, that tower?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, the main one, okay.
So we're, over the next several years, but we're starting now, we're gonna build a second water tower. The same exact size, which is 750,000 gallons. And because the water tower we have right now can only drain at about 20% before we start losing pressure in some of the higher elevations. And meet some of the requirements that fire officials would have for sudden drain down and things like that. So we're going to put up a second tower, and then as soon as we get that one built, we're going to drain the existing tower and recoat it and repaint it and everything, and then bring that back up. That's about a $3 million thing, which includes the land. We don't actually own that land. I don't know.
Easement.
Yeah.
We'll have to, we haven't, we're
It's an
making an
easement.
agreement to buy.
Oh,
But
nice.
And there was some concern whether you want to put that tower next to the existing tower, in case we have an earthquake or something, and both towers go down, or we should put it someplace else, but there's no other place to put it in Newmarket.
So has the council got any further development in Newmarket until that gets done?
No.
Okay,
We have,
all right.
we have
We're-
capacity.
we
That's
have a-
good.
How can that be?
Because we have a pumping system in addition to that tower.
For pressure.
The pressure, okay.
Pressure.
Because I was like,
Okay.
that makes no sense to
All
me.
right, so
Yeah.
we don't need to be really, nothing the board has to be worried
Right,
about.
yeah,
Okay,
no,
okay. Anything else?
that's it.
Okay.
How long is the bridge gonna be closed on National Road?
Say it again.
Is the construction on Ash Swamp Road gonna take?
The Ash Swamp, so you probably heard that the railroad is delayed, right? The railroad is from Brunswick, Maine, down to like.
North Station.
Someplace in Connecticut or something. They're
Yeah.
doing every single, what do they call ties? Every tie is being replaced. That's like a major project, right? That one has not changed, but it closed. And the reason is, we got a price on just closing it and doing it versus closing half the bridge, and then doing the other bridge, and it was like literally twice the price to have it one lane open all the time. So whatever is posted on it's on the website, the town
I saw the
website.
start date, I just didn't see the end date, that's why I was curious, if they knew it was like a 6-month construction or 3 month.
No, it's not that long.
Right, yeah, I just didn't see anything posted on the end date. That was
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought I read a couple weeks somewhere, but I'm not sure where.
yeah. I don't have the number in front of me. The easiest place to call, what's her name?
Just call Lindsay.
Lindsay.
Lindsay,
Yeah.
yeah. I can't remember her name. Just ask Lindsay, she'll know.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't as well.
Okay. Art, any planner reports?
Yeah, we're going to be actually doing a parking study soon. So if anyone wants to volunteer, it'd be great.
Is this the UNH thing?
It's our thing. It's SRPC. We're looking for volunteers. So in this time frame, we want to do in April to capture UNH traffic. No, it's Stratford Regional, and the town is doing this parking study.
Right. And anything else?
No. Good.
Okay. When is the planning and zoning conference date? Could we?
I'll look that up. I don't know off the
Okay.
top of my head.
All right. And then for new members, planning and zoning is a conference is put on by
MHMA, New Hampshire Municipal Association.
And it's every year. It's great for any new members of our board or refresher. It will go through a whole series. There's like 2 paths. If you're a new member to a zoning board, there's special breakout sessions for that. And then if you're a member of a planning board or new member, there's some special sessions and then other sub-sessions. So it's fabulous to go to for sure, especially for new members. And then,
And then the town.
and the
will-
town.
We'll reimburse you.
Okay, the town will reimburse,
Or reimbursement.
yeah.
So
So,
for instance, who should we go through with that?
so Bart, you'll
I'll
send out.
send out the
Okay.
notice.
A schedule, and then I think too, if you can't make it, they're recording them. I think
okay.
last year's are
Yeah.
available. I think you have to sign up in order to get access.
Okay.
So maybe if you could, but making sure we can get that date out there, and then if multiple people want to go and carpool, I don't even know where it is this year, Concord maybe.
Most likely.
Okay. To election of leader of our chair and vice chair. Those are the 2 positions on the board. To basically run and
Nose goes.
serve when. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to nominate Val.
Oh, boy.
Chair of the-
Second that.
Any discussion on the motion? This is a tough one, guys. All right, so,
Right.
hearing no discussion, I'll just call the vote. All those in favor?
I
I will abstain. Is there a motion for a vice chair? I can't have an alternate, so it has to be
Yeah.
a standing member.
I'm looking at you too, because I haven't been back
I was
long
gonna
enough
say,
to even think about it yet.
Jane has to do rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, but Jane's also very short, so no, Jane's not going to do that. Thank you, though.
Consider?
I would consider if really nobody else wants to do it, because I am new, but I feel that I'm well-spoken enough and organized enough, I could do it if people
That'd be
felt
great.
like that was good for. make a nomination then, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can.
Okay.
I nominate Zach to fill in as the vice chair.
Oh, to be the vice, elect to the position of vice chair, thank you. Second? Any discussion?
Who seconded it? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Jeff seconded,
Okay.
sorry. Jane and Jeff. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only other item to discuss, committee assignments, think about, you know, Jeff, if you want to stay on as Conservation Commission, we do have an opening on energy environment. You can go on the website and you can read what it's all about, but we do have there's an open position now, planning board member to be appointed to that position. And then Jane, if you're going to stay on capital improvements,
Happy to.
all right, and then to think about, we also like the positions, especially for capital improvements, because we're also trying to get the kind of people, that's a big one, because that's all about the budgets and funding everything the town owns and is responsible of.
I would say that it's important for the planning board to have two people, because it is a very important committee to be on.
And for succession planning, because it's not something you just want to go in and you're the new rep, and we only have that voice.
Yep.
So give some consideration there. And alternates can serve. Yeah, we can appoint alternates to those particular committees.
Are we doing those?
Well, I think people should think about it.
When is the CIP season? When are they ready?
Typically July, well, departments will start budgeting in June
Yeah.
for July, and ideally we'd be beginning of August. We try to shoot for that, but sometimes it's later, so August, September.
But it is very important, because it does talk about each of the needs of the departments for the town. And so where we have a good background of where the town's going, it's kind of a nice flow to have the two of them together.
And then this kind of ties back to the master plan too.
Yeah.
So,
Which is my next topic.
yes, I was gonna.
We are
Bring that up.
undergoing a rewrite of the entire master plan this year. All the chapters, the vision statement, and there's a master plan committee that's made up of various appointees. And then there subcommittees for each of the chapters. And everything will be coming to this planning board for review and public hearings. And then the planning board is the entity that adopts the master plan in every chapter. So there's been a tremendous amount of work by Stratford Regional Planning, BART especially, and then the different committees putting together their proposed chapters that come to us for review and public hearings. We really will have a very aggressive schedule to get this through the process. So we talked a little bit last month about thinking, do we want to, right now we only meet once a month. Does it make sense that, do we start meetings earlier and just devote specific time to, on the earlier part of the agenda to deal with a chapter? Or do we meet twice a month and have one of the monthly meetings? A lot of municipalities do this, where one of the monthly meetings is a workshop. So we would still, we would pick another week, another day, whatever, that the planning board would convene, and it would be totally just focused on the master plan. So it's going to be a lot of work. Any thoughts?
Would that be temporary, having two meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I say temporary, the
Just
goal
gonna
would
be
be
wild.
this from like here to the end of the year, would you say?
Most
Or
likely,
into
yeah.
November?
Yeah.
And I know with the kids and everything,
That's fine, I just need to know.
Yeah, I definitely think with rewrites of all this, the public hearing, all that, that's gonna preoccupy. I mean, tonight was a good example of how long that took. The regular meetings are gonna take this long. I don't see how we're gonna get through the.
if we have any applications before us, it will, pushes it
further.
it pushes it off the agenda sometimes, right?
So I feel like we need to have some separate meeting for it, whether it's a twice a month thing or you do a special, like you propose like a Saturday or something like that. I don't have kids, so
Oh.
I'll let you guys decide. on
So
the
think
things.
about that. We don't have to make any decisions tonight, but really we should, because Bart needs to put together kind of a schedule, draft schedule for the chapter, you know, when we would get them to start deliberating on, and then when they would go to public hearing, and believe me, you know, just going through this as a zoning amendment, we're gonna be able to do 2 chapters a night. So it will just be too much bandwidth.
I'm on board with the idea of separating the meetings, definitely.
Okay, good,
I agree.
all right. And then,
But not Saturday.
not a Saturday, okay. So maybe we do, maybe people get back to Bart or do some kind of, you know, what are they called? The poll- poll-
Do like doodle
Survey
poll, Survey
monkey,
Monkey, yeah.
Okay, then people, we can figure out what might best work for people.
Yeah, we got summer schedules coming up too, so
Yeah.
everyone's different, so yeah,
Okay,
figure that out.
The plan around subcommittees too.
right,
Everyone is on.
Yep.
exactly.
So, calendars.
Okay. Yeah, so even though you might want to jump in and volunteer for all this other stuff that Bart is looking for
We got a lot on
volunteers,
our plate.
just know that this is coming.
Need a bigger group.
Need a bigger group.
Well, the problem is it still comes here, right?
Yep.
So there's no way to get around that.
Getting a bigger boat.
Okay, any other new business or old business? Hearing none?
I make a motion that we adjourn. That's what I'm good at. That's what I'll always do for this meeting.
Okay. And is there a second?
Second that.
Yeah.
Any discussion? And all those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
And
you.
again,
Good meeting.
You know, welcome to the board.
Yeah.
Look forward to working with you.